o muy buenas tardes o muy buenas noches, depende de dónde estén. Es para nosotros un gran placer estar hoy acá porque estamos terminando la semana del Foro Global de los Servicios en el marco de la UNTAD y además estamos comenzando el ciclo anual ALES 2021. Y es una gran satisfacción hacerlo. Hoy vamos a tener un par de paneles y la presentación de nuestro libro, pero antes que nada le quería agradecer en particular, en especial a UNTAD por la invitación, a Alex por estar acá hoy, coorganizando este evento, en particular a mi hijo, a Bruno, a Cepal, a Nano, a Cas, a Marce y obviamente también a nuestros coorganizadores en las futuras actividades que vamos a hacer durante octubre, a Caribbean Export, a su director, el señor Deobat Maharat, y a nuestros colegas Alison y Marvin especialmente. A los miembros de ALES que están presentes en 17 países de América Latina y el Caribe, y en particular también a la Cámara Argentina de Comercio, que colaborará con nuestras actividades en las próximas semanas. Sin más, queremos dar la bienvenida a el señor ministro de Industria y Comercio y MIPYMES de República Dominicana, que dará unas palabras de bienvenida a este foro.
Honorable Yolanda Torriani, presidenta de la Asociación Latinoamericana de Exportadores de Servicios. Honorable Deobat Maharat, director ejecutivo de Caribbean Export. Honorables ministros y embajadores, estimados representantes del sector privado, estimados señores y señoras. Es un honor dirigirme a ustedes en esta Semana Global de Servicios, en el marco de la 15ª sesión de la Conferencia de las Naciones Unidas sobre Comercio y Desarrollo. Deseo expresar en nombre de nuestro presidente Luis Abinader Corona y en el mío propio nuestras felicitaciones a la Comisión Económica para América Latina y el Caribe, CEPAL, y a la Asociación Latinoamericana de Exportadores de Servicios por la coordinación de este foro. Escenarios como este representan una oportunidad para que los países de América Latina y el Caribe fortalezcamos nuestro posicionamiento como proveedores de servicios competitivos y sofisticados, sector que, aunque invisible a los ojos, ha sido impulsor del desarrollo socioeconómico de muchas naciones. Nuestra región está lista para reconectar con el mundo y potencializar juntos la innovación y las nuevas rutas que abren en el mundo post-COVID. En el 2020, los servicios profesionales y los de tecnología y las industrias creativas mostraron un crecimiento significativo en su valor agregado como actividad económica según la Organización Mundial del Comercio. Convencidos del gran potencial de crecimiento de este sector, en mayo de este año lanzamos la primera Estrategia Nacional de Exportación de Servicios Modernos de la República Dominicana, una herramienta que procura transformar la industria y el comercio nacional mediante el mejoramiento de las competencias de los recursos humanos, la modernización de los aspectos normativos e institucionales, implementación de iniciativas para atraer inversión extranjera directa, la estimulación de la investigación y la creación de nuevos servicios y la promoción de los servicios en los mercados internacionales, aprovechando los beneficios otorgados en los acuerdos comerciales. Esta estrategia trabaja de manera articulada con todas las demás acciones gubernamentales que promueven la recuperación económica del país, como por ejemplo el nearshoring, modelo que demanda soluciones tecnológicas pero más cerca de las casas matrices, y el microsourcing, que busca talento donde quiera que esté y que puede generar oportunidades a la pequeña y mediana empresa de servicios a exportar de manera sostenida. Estamos enfocados en conectar nuestro talento y nuestra creatividad con las oportunidades que necesitamos para el desarrollo inclusivo y sostenible de nuestra región, enfrentando de manera innovadora los desafíos que la pandemia ha acelerado y visibilizado. En nombre de la República Dominicana, seguiremos trabajando de manera cohesionada, desarrollando políticas públicas que promuevan los servicios que cada vez tienen mayor peso en la economía global. Muchas gracias.
Estimado señor ministro, ha sido un placer escucharlo y felicitaciones por la estrategia y muchas gracias por mencionar uno de los conceptos que mencionamos en nuestro libro, el microsourcing. Estimado señor, dear Mr. Deodat Maharat, welcome to this session and thank you very much for your support for this event. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you so very much and good morning. Minister Victor Bissono, Minister of Industry, Trade and MSMEs of the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic is a very strong partner and friend of the Caribbean Export Development Agency. Mrs. Yolanda Toriani, President of ALICE Peru. Mr. Javier Peña Capobianco, Secretary General of ALICE. Distinguished panelists, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, buenos dias, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We at the Caribbean Export Development Agency, we are very pleased to partner with the Latin American Association of Services Exporters, ALICE, on the hosting of this conference, Business Opportunities in the New Era of Global Services, as part of the Global Services Forum Week. As our agency implements its new strategic plan over the period 2021 to 2024, under the theme, Building Business, Transforming Lives for a Resilient Caribbean, the services sector forms an absolutely critical pillar because we believe the services sector represents the next frontier for business in the Caribbean. In this regard, the agency will focus on such sectors as business and professional services, information and communication technology, education services, and of course, the creative sector in areas such as music, fashion, animation, and film. Fora and activities like the one this morning and the continuation of our partnership with ALICE and the business-to-business sessions always gives us great satisfaction. Through activities like this, we get to bring together key relevant stakeholders to understand their views and experiences on ways to unlock the development potential of the services sector. The Caribbean region is at a critical crossroad, at a time of great challenge, but also a time of unique opportunity. COVID-19, in laying bare our vulnerabilities, has also given the added impetus to focus on private sector development as an essential dimension of our thrust to build strong and resilient Caribbean economies. We at the Caribbean Export Development Agency recognize that business as usual will not work and cannot work in delivering opportunities in terms of creating jobs and driving growth in the Caribbean and for Caribbean people. The services sector gives us a better chance for businesses to diversify, innovate, and digitize. The pandemic underscored the need for a digital pivot. The very nature of providing a service requires a robust digital infrastructure, from marketing your service online, delivery of your service, and of course, receiving payment. Providing and proving service-led transformation is therefore key to post-pandemic recovery. There's room for services to grow and become a greater generator of jobs and foreign exchange in areas such as business and professional services, green technology, ICT, music, fashion, animation, and film. In this crucial time, we must look at commoditizing the creativity and talent of our people into viable commercial opportunities. However, there are prerequisites. We need to focus on innovation and helping businesses take advantage of opportunities provided by digitalization, including strengthening capacities, will be key dimensions moving forward for us at the Caribbean Export Development Agency. To be competitive in the global marketplace, service providers need to be driving more innovation into their products and services. The COVID-19 crisis has undoubtedly accelerated digital transformation across the world and revealed the possibilities offered by technology solutions to enhance and support our lives and sustain and grow business. Innovation, of course, and ICT play a critical role in business development. Caribbean Export will undertake specific interventions to enable firms to build sustainable ICT-based and innovation-driven business models with a global reach. The ALICE conference and business-to-business sessions provide a unique opportunity to build partnerships and collaboration between service firms in Latin America and the Caribbean to improve their international position and achieve sustainable economic growth. The services sector, as I've said before, is the next frontier for Caribbean business, and Caribbean Export is committed to working with all partners, including ALICE, to help realize the full potential of the services sector as we seek to transform our economies, create jobs, and build a resilient Caribbean. We at Caribbean Export are delighted to have teamed up with the Latin America Association of Service Exporters to host this series of events. I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you and have this conversation this morning. Good luck for an exciting, informative session, and we look very much forward to participating. Wishing you every success. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much again, Mr. Maharat, for your support in this cycle of event, and once again for yours collaborators, Alison, Marvin, and all the others. Y ahora tenemos el gusto de recibir a nuestra amiga Yolanda Torriani, que es la presidenta de ALICE. Bienvenida.
Hola, muy buenos días. Bienvenidos todos. Un saludo especial al señor Ito Bisono Hatza, ministro de Industria, Comercio y MIPYMES de la República Dominicana, al señor Deodat Maharak de la Caribbean Export. Un cordial saludo a todos los miembros de la Junta Directiva y asociados de la Asociación Latinoamericana de Exportadores de Servicios, ALES. Como no, a nuestro querido Javier Peña Capobianco, secretario de ALES, valioso ser humano. Asimismo, un cálido y cordial saludo a los representantes de la Conferencia de las Naciones Unidas sobre Comercio y Desarrollo, UNCTAD, a la Comisión Económica para América Latina y el Caribe, CEPAL, y a la Fundación Konrad Adenauer. También deseo saludar a nuestros queridos amigos de la Cámara Argentina de Comercio y Servicios por el apoyo para la realización de esta secuencia de eventos y a las instituciones empresariales que nos apoyan. La valiosa participación de los especialistas y expertos nacionales e internacionales ligados al tema de la exportación de servicios que nos acompañan y por permitirnos generar estos importantes espacios que apoyan la generación del conocimiento, difusión de oportunidades y poder exportar el talento al mundo. En este escenario, la Asociación Latinoamericana de Exportadores de Servicios, organismo internacional integrado por más de 30 instituciones públicas y privadas de 17 países de América Latina, Centroamérica y el Caribe, en su ciclo anual de eventos ALES 2021, denominado Partners Going Global, será un escenario único en el cual, además de conocer las últimas tendencias en el mercado, los invitados tendrán la ocasión de identificar oportunidades de negocios e inversión en el sector, así como realizar networking con los principales CEOs y referentes del mercado a nivel internacional. La participación de empresas de servicios de la región y actores de primera línea de los distintos países que nos acompañan. Asimismo, como la participación de delegados de más de 20 países en representación de organizaciones de promoción de exportaciones e inversiones, cámaras de comercio y asociaciones de exportadores. Hoy América Latina se ha convertido en una oportunidad como proveedora de servicios de exportación. La prestación de servicios usa un elemento estructural de crecimiento en nuestros países y de innovación. En ALES buscamos fortalecer la oferta de la región, abrir nuevos mercados y aprovechar las ventajas competitivas de cada uno de los países. Por ello, presentamos este ciclo de conferencias con el propósito de promover la competitividad de América Latina en el mercado de servicios globales, para hacer mostrar su valor agregado y fomentar el espíritu empresarial en un sector de alto dinamismo en tiempos de pandemia. Recordemos que el éxito de la exportación de servicios va de la mano con la creatividad y con la apertura para identificar oportunidades, teniendo en cuenta que nuestra originalidad e ingenio representan virtudes que nos pueden llevar a proveer de servicios de muy alto valor agregado. Por ello, hoy estamos aquí reunidos precisamente para seguir analizando el presente y el futuro que viene. Tenemos creatividad, decisión, conocimiento para ser grandes jugadores y unidos podremos hacerlo, porque así llevaremos desarrollo a nuestros países, permitiendo que millones de ciudadanos latinoamericanos puedan beneficiarse. Asimismo, en este ciclo de conferencias virtuales que iniciamos hoy hasta el 3 de noviembre, se presentarán temas como el futuro de los servicios, cuáles son las mejores oportunidades para la deslocalización y en particular para el nearshoring, el lanzamiento del libro La nueva era de los servicios globales, TICs aplicadas a sectores tradicionales para exportar actividades de valor agregado, cómo enfrentar la competencia de talento desde el exterior, cuáles son los nuevos modelos de negocios en servicios globales, cómo identificar y captar mercados en y post pandemia, cuáles son los incentivos adecuados en un mundo post-COVID, la economía naranja, creatividad y innovación y las acciones que debemos realizar para seguir adelante con nuevas iniciativas. Y esto lo notaremos con nuestros invitados y expositores. Agradezco la presencia de todos ustedes el día de hoy y les doy la más cordial y reiterada bienvenida. Felicito una vez más a nuestro querido secretario general, Javier Peña Capobianco, y deseo que el éxito de estas jornadas trascienda a todos nosotros. Muchas gracias.
Excelente mensaje, Yolanda, muchas gracias por estar ahí.
Con mucho cariño. Gracias.
Declaramos inaugurada este ciclo de eventos que se durará hasta la primera semana de noviembre y le damos la bienvenida a nuestra otra amiga, Ninoshka Linde. ¿Estás por ahí, Ninoshka?
Hola, buenos días a todos. Un gusto estar nuevamente acá en el programa de ALES con todos estos líderes regionales y globales que más que un trabajo abren día a día con pasión el camino para que los servicios globales crezcan, para que Latinoamérica se posicione dentro del mercado internacional y para que realmente podamos obtener las ventajas que en nuestra economía puede traer la industria de servicios. I'm going to be moderating the panel, The Future of Services. As you know, during the pandemic, global services have been resilient. In addition, many companies that were located far ashore decided to relocate or open part of their activities in the region to maintain business continuity and to take advantage of nearshoring. Today, with a panel of leaders and experts, We will discuss about the best opportunities for global services in the future and in particular for nearshoring. So I'm pleased to present our panelists. First, Carrie Hallard, CEO and driving force behind the Global Sourcing Association, a membership-focused organization whose mission is to grow the reach and the positive reputation of the sourcing industry globally through the development and dissemination of best practices, the distribution of standards and qualifications, and the publications and sharing of learning from across the industry. Carrie's career spans over 20 years in strategic consultancy and corporate communications in the high-tech and business-to-business area. Welcome, Carrie, today to this panel. Atul Bashishta, a friend and a serial entrepreneur with deep expertise around the intersection of technology, global supply chain, and risk management. Atul is founder and chairman of Supply Wisdom and Neo Group, and is also the visionary behind the GBS Board and Risk Board. Atul has authored 3 books, Globalization Wisdom, Outsourcing Wisdom, and The Offshore Nation. Atul has received many recognitions and awards. Among these, was recognized by Consulting Magazine as the top 25 most influential consultants. Welcome, Atul. Steve Tablin is the CEO of Sonify, a premier nearshore software development services firm that provides its clients with expertise in cloud solutions, web and mobile applications, e-commerce, big data, DevOps practices, QA, and machine learning. He's an official member of the Forbes Technology Council and the Entrepreneur Magazine Leadership Network, and is a frequent contributor to their online publications. He's also an official member of the Alliance of Chief Executives. And with us, Arturo Lopez Valerio is a pioneer in cloud computing, e-commerce, digital marketing, developing high traffic projects in the Dominican Republic. Since 2011, he operates in Tabuga, a company that is dedicated to the promotion of knowledge, technology, and innovation for the transformation and advancement of business growth, developing digital communities, digital marketing strategies, and entrepreneurship with the reach of more than 1 million Dominicans. In 2010, he was appointed as a national expert for the Dominican Republic by the WSA, an initiative of the UN and its global alliances for ICT and development. So welcome to all of you to this panel. We're going to try to make the panel interesting and dynamic. We were coordinating prior to this, and we have decided that we're going to make a flow from the past, the present, and the future, starting and how the pandemic has affected different areas. And we're going to start with Steve. Steve, how the pandemic has affected the U.S. business?
And thank you for the question and for having me. And my company is based in the U.S., as was mentioned. And what a big thing the pandemic has done for the technology industry is it's forced the small to medium-sized businesses who, when it came to software development and a lot of technology functions, they wanted to have everybody in one location at their office, working together hand in hand, where larger companies have made that move where they were going both offshore and nearshore. They have been doing that for a long time, but the small to medium-sized businesses were forced to adapt the distributed workforce for their teams, and specifically in their technology area. And so what that did was really open up a flood of new business for Latin America, and specifically as it relates to the US for nearshore support, where you're working with resources that are English speaking and on the same time zone. And so what this has done is it's forced the small and medium-sized business sectors to adapt to these new strategies. And that has been a big part of the growth since the pandemic has begun, with nearshoring from United States business perspective. And then as it relates to software development, which is what my company focuses on, there is such a scarcity of high quality resources that companies can hire in the United States, let alone in the world right now, as it's a competitive market. And the rates they're having to pay for US based resources has really been another factor to force even more companies to look to nearshore resources. So it's changed the dynamic of how a lot of companies, small and medium sized, are forced to do business in a similar manner like large companies.
Is this also related to buyers and suppliers of the outsourcing services? I think it's something that is complementary, and I will ask Atul to really help us to grow the whole idea of the continuity of what Steve has said.
Great. So first of all, let's start with kudos to the Latin American companies, because other than maybe call centers, the companies were incredibly resilient. And so it's only enhanced the reputation of the ability of LATAM nearshore to serve markets. So kudos on that. Let me talk about a few key effects that we saw, and let's talk about some trends. So number one, it became very clear that companies that were cloud forward, companies that were digital, were able to move both their employees very quickly to a remote working environment, and they were also able to engage their customers and serve their customers with that distributed environment. So what does that mean to locations and the role of governments as such? And I think this is where there was a very big recognition that if you were a call center example, a country that was promoting call centers, you actually suffered because you could not have people in those office environments. But if you had digital environments, right? So maybe you moved from call centers to chat and such tools, you were actually able to meet the needs of those customers. So I think the first lesson we should take away is this move towards digitization of business, digitization of serving customers. If you're not moving in that direction, you are both hampered and you will be challenged going forward. The other thing that I want us to think about is that I think fundamentally the power shifted. The power shifted during COVID from the employer to the employee, right? When I reflect on my 21 years as an entrepreneur in this space, one of the things I always talked about was talent without borders. So we talked about how companies could find talent anywhere. But the thing we all did not realize, at least I didn't realize it, how a lot of companies define the borders as the offices that they have or the offices of their supplier. And COVID fundamentally changed that. Those borders disappeared. I'm talking to companies, we're helping solve tech companies' problems where they fundamentally do not have their suppliers in any offices. This is a tech software development company where everybody is distributed. And so it doesn't matter that they are in 4 different cities, but the power is shifted to the employee, which is the employees will decide. When a company says come back to work, employees are going to decide whether they want to do that or not. And I think that's why they're calling this great resignation, where there's predicting that 40% of the employees are looking for their next job already because of this. And I think it's because of how they are being treated and how companies think about boundaries where work is done. I'm happy to share more, but Ninoshka, I'll stop there because I know we have such an incredible panel. Love to hear from the others also.
Thank you, Atul. I think it would be really interesting to see if Kerry could share with us if it's the same situation that is happening in the UK and in Europe, and see how we can relate this. I really like power shifted from the employer to the employee. I'm excited about it, Atul. I'm going to be one of those.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. So, buenos dias and muchas gracias para la invitación. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I'd like to come on to the point that you made, Atul, in a minute. But first of all, I'll give a perspective of what we've been seeing in the UK and Europe. So obviously, so many industries have been hugely negatively impacted by the pandemic. And we shouldn't gloat, but if we look at the global technology and business services industry, we absolutely excelled. So global technology business services in the UK, it used to be called outsourcing, where companies were partnering with different organizations all around the world, historically had quite a negative reputation. The reputation was very much that you would outsource to reduce cost, lose British jobs and get an inferior service back. Now, unfortunately, that was all being rumoured by the British government and in the British media. The reality for people that work in global technology and business services know that it's about something incredibly different. It's about partnering, it's about collaboration, it's about driving innovation and giving value into the business through partnering and through partners all around the world. So when the pandemic hit, it was global partnerships all around the world that mobilized and helped their customers not just keep the lights on, but actually keep the wheels turning and start driving some real transformations. So our industry, as a result of the pandemic, has seen trust and partnerships grow and continue to grow. And as a result, pilots, digital transformation programs that were perhaps bubbling away, waiting in the wings for a really long time, suddenly had to be mobilized because everybody was in the working from home environment, virtual requirements. And those digital transformations worked. So now we're seeing an absolute huge appetite to drive more and more digital transformation. So throughout the pandemic in 2020, research that we did as the Global Technology and Business Services Council with Everest showed a 1% market growth. 2021, we're predicting market growth of, well, originally 5%. I think it's going to be bigger than that. So we are probably in the biggest global economic boom for global technology and business services. So the opportunity right now is staggering, it's huge, and the industry has never had a more positive platform to prove the value and innovation that it can deliver. And it really was the partnerships, all around the world. If we look at how India responded, they actually, the Indian government made technology workers classed as essential workers. So they could actually leave their homes and get out and go into those offices. Now, if that hadn't have happened, if they weren't seen as the essential workers that they absolutely were, I think we might all have been in a different situation. I know lots of countries responded, equally as well. So yeah, at the moment we're going through huge growth, and we just cannot actually access enough talent to deliver on the opportunities that are out there. So that's I think the biggest challenge we've got at the moment. And coming on to Atul's point about everything being the boundaries and power shifting to the employee, I'd go even further than that, Atul, and power has shifted to the individual. So we see the gig worker and the open talent being the biggest game changer this industry has ever witnessed. I think probably bigger than offshoring itself, because people want to work for themselves, and they can work for themselves whatever hours they want from wherever they are around the world. So absolutely huge changes that I forecast in that area.
Thank you, Carrie. I would like to just make a comment. You think that the growth that you're having at this certain time, it was because you were ready for the digital transformation? I think most of the UK and European countries were ready to plug into the transformation, something that could be different for Latin America and other areas of the world. You think that growth is based, the pillar would be that you guys were ready for the digital transformation, or also because you had people that were ready to be open talent, or how you combine those?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of all of it. There were some organizations, as I say, that were piloting digital transformation programs, but not really doing them in earnest. they were worried. They've always been very worried about turning off any of their legacy servers and moving fully into cloud. Everyone's been parallel running. They've gone into cloud, but they've been running cloud in conjunction with their legacy servers, which actually is the most uneconomic idea possible. So I think you know, the bandwidth that we have here, the telco infrastructure, you know, all of that actually stood up incredibly well throughout the pandemic. So there was very little sort of downtime for broadband. I think most organizations, and I agree with Steve, you know, obviously the call center industry found it really quite difficult to carry on delivering great customer service when everybody was working from home overnight. But other than that, you know, the move to working from home was significantly easier than any of us, I think, had ever envisaged. There've been so many blockers for employing and letting people work remotely, and that's just vanished now, you know, because it is proven that it worked incredibly well.
Well, Ninoshka and Carrie, I would just add to that. So we saw if three factors existed in a location, they responded better. One was they had the infrastructure, and infrastructure we mean by, you know, very much was bandwidth. Second was technology. You know, there were places where the people could not get laptops. There were places where they could not get wireless hubs, things like that. And then the third was the talent was actually ready to leverage that infrastructure and the tools that were provided to them. If you had those three, you could see that those locations actually responded really well.
Thank you, Atul. Yes, I mean, all of us that have been seeing these challenges and also confronting the challenges in some of the countries, we didn't have either the talent or the infrastructure, the technology, and we're trying to cope with that. And however, Latin American countries, because of the deviation of the market to the nearshore, we're able to grow in spite of our challenges. So now, Arturo, you can give us a little bit tropicalization from the Dominican Republic and let us know how was the challenge there and how was the offer in Dominican Republic while it was happening.
Gracias, Ninoshka. Saludos a Kerry, Atul y Steve. Gracias por la invitación. Fíjate, básicamente lo que creemos que sucedió, yo le llamo al 2020 el año de los imposibles, porque desde el año 2017, desde la Cámara TIC hemos liderado un enfoque de remote first, es decir, llevar a los negocios a que, aunque no fuese necesario por urgencia, como pasó el año pasado, se necesitaba tener las habilidades construidas para el trabajo remoto. Y eso fue lo que ayudó a negocios como el nuestro y miembros de la Cámara TIC o la Cámara de Tecnologías de la República Dominicana a poder tener una continuidad operativa. Y esto que se refería a Kerry y a Atul sobre el estar preparados, fíjense que en nuestro país teníamos la preparación, pero no la adopción. Esto significa que teníamos la capacidad de incrementar un 30% el consumo de banda ancha, pero no lo hacíamos. Teníamos la capacidad de enviar los empleados a sus hogares, por lo menos al nivel gerencial y el nivel medio, pero no lo hacíamos. Somos un país caribeño, el clima es perfecto, ¿para qué quedarse en la casa? Nos gusta salir. Entonces, la cultura nos llevó a no adoptar la tecnología de una manera que nos hiciese más eficientes. Ahora, comparando esto, lo que nos ha sucedido con el contexto global que ustedes exponen es una atomización. ¿Qué sucede? El sector de exportación de servicios modernos y digitales prácticamente ahora recibió un boost, una aceleración, porque hay una demanda global. En los mercados que ustedes están refiriéndose, hace falta recursos y ustedes están buscando por estas tierras. Pero al mismo tiempo, nuestras empresas están empezando a transformar digitalmente y están requiriendo los mismos recursos. Y el Estado ahora, según las palabras que escuchamos del ministro de Industria, Comercio y MIPYMES, Víctor Bisonó, prácticamente el Estado dominicano también está en un proceso de transformación y todos estamos buscando los mismos recursos. Entonces, el talento se está atomizando porque está eligiendo con quién va a trabajar, con quién va a ofrecer sus servicios especializados. Y como decía Tul, prácticamente ellos tienen conectividad, tienen una herramienta como una computadora y tienen el skill. Pero prácticamente lo que antes un recurso iba a una empresa privada o iba a trabajar técnicamente al sector de servicios. Pero ahora se están quedando en un fenómeno que yo le llamo los invisibles, que prácticamente se están quedando en su casa, están trabajando para un neobanco en Brasil y no participan en el encadenamiento porque estas empresas globales los están contactando directamente. Entonces, ese es el cambio quizá en nuestra estructura local que ha sido enfatizado y catalizado por la pandemia. Más bien decir que internamente a nivel de economía digital crecimos un 4,31% del Producto Interno Bruto el año pasado, lo cual fue un crecimiento increíble. Es decir, nuestro país empezó a adoptar digitalmente tecnología que tenía, a conectarse más a los flujos globales y los actores individuales, entonces empezaron a conectarse ya como individuos y no como parte de una cadena.
Gracias, Arturo. I think it's complementary to what you were saying, you know, I mean, shifting the power from the employer to the employee, open talent, the individuals having the power. I think now the greatest challenge for our governments, and it's how to prepare this talent fast in this scaling up and all these fast tracking programs so we can be competitive and take advantage of the opportunity that COVID is bringing us. I mean, I think we have talked about the negative part, and the media is full of the negative part of COVID, but I think it has brought and accelerated a process that we foreseen years ago. And we went to all the alleys and we talk about the transformation of the economy and the digitalization and the remote work and so on, but it was something that we were not experiencing. Now we have experienced it full, and we want to talk about what major changes happen because of this reality. We already have seen that the transformation and the digitalization are priors, but I would like to talk about what happened. I mean, what was the main challenge coming from this? And for you, Atul, what about the chain risk management and resilience, and why it became more critical during these times?
Right, absolutely. So if you look at, so by the way, in 2017, I started a company because I saw this problem, which was when you look at supply chain risk, the way companies were looking at supply chain risk is they would evaluate a supplier when they first onboard them, and then maybe once a year or when something really bad happened. And they would often look at very limited set of risks. They would look at the financial health of the supplier, and then when technology was involved, they would look at the cyber health of the supplier. Well, COVID was none of those. COVID started as a location risk that was local and then spread very quickly globally. What was the first thing it impacted? It actually impacted the health of employees, the workforce, people risk. Then it started to impact what I would call operations risk, the ability of your infrastructure to keep up with that. Not financial, not cyber. Financial risk and cyber risk came later for some of the smaller, medium companies that were greatly impacted because of these challenges of not being able to serve. So I think what it is highlighted about supply chains, and by the way, there's tremendous problems we're having even today. I mean, this morning I was reading about how food is being impacted all across Europe because of shortages in carbon dioxide and not able to manufacture fertilizer. Just I'm using that example, but so I think what the future has to be is that we have to start thinking of not just risk management, we have to start thinking about supply chain resilience. So we have to think about is number one is how do I make sure I understand the health of my suppliers and suppliers chains holistically. So we recommend that companies look at 7 risk domains: financial cyber, operations, compliance, ESG, nth party, and locations. COVID started as a location-based risk. And you can no longer rely on point-in-time assessments when you think about a supply chain. You have to have continuous intelligence. And that was one of the reasons why I started a company called Supply Wisdom, because we can today provide real-time continuous risk intelligence because of how we leverage automation, machine learning, AI, and data science to actually do that and do it way more efficiently than humans can. So I think when you think about from a location perspective, because I know many on this call are really focused on investment promotion, you have to think about your location and say, is my location resilient when it comes to managing all these risks? When we have a weather issue, when we have a political issue, when we have a legal issue, when we have an IP issue, how resilient is the location in responding to that? Ninosha, you talked about how LATAM responded. Arturo, you talked about how your zone responded. And that's because they're aware of how to be resilient. The final thing I'll leave you with is consumers and society is fundamentally changed in the last 2 to 3 years. And it was starting before COVID. The issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion and environmental issues are more relevant today than they've ever been. And so if you're a company, you need to think about how you think about your ESG rating, environmental, societal, and governance ratings. But you also have to do that as a location. In the future, this will become another factors that companies will look at, employers will look at when they think about which location should I be in, where should I do business, and they're going to look at the ESG status of that location.
Thank you, Atul. I think it's really interesting, and I would like to see how Carrie used this resilient and how she helped through the GT and BSC the companies to steer during this time, and they steer the industry, helping them to be resilient. So Carrie, with you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the Global Technology and Business Services Council, but just to very briefly introduce it, when the pandemic hit and we saw how well the industry had responded, we saw this as being a really big opportunity to, one, celebrate the industry, but two, to reposition the industry in the way that we see it, as I mentioned before, all about collaboration, partnering, and global delivery excellence. So it's an alliance of 12 of the leading industry associations around the world, and I'm delighted to say that Alice is one of them. And in the United States, we've got IAOP. In India, we've got NASSCOM, and GSA is a representative from United Kingdom. But we've got, all corners of the globe covered. And what we've done is we've come together to look at all of the issues we believe our members are facing all around the world. So we first looked at the size of the industry. We second looked at really important subject of open talent and what impact that was actually going to have globally. We looked at the subject of responsible automation and how important it is. We fully agree that automation is going to happen. We need to embrace it. It delivers phenomenal benefits, perhaps originally overhyped in the early days, but certainly delivers benefits. But we need to actually do that automation responsibly. So, it's a key message is to look at, and I know governments are doing this all around the world, is looking at the skill sets they've got and predicting what skill sets they're going to need if they're going to achieve their visions and strategies for the next 3 to 5 years. And we're seeing wholesale changes where people working in the accountancy profession, for example, are being reskilled to actually become data analysts, because those skill sets are very, very similarly aligned. So we've been pushing subjects like that and looking at the future of work and what governments and associations like ours need to do to future-proof the employees around the world. And the next event that we'll be running is actually looking at, changing global strategic operating models and how organizations have been changing those. So we have seen, and we've got a number of really big brands that are willing to share, hopefully, their case studies as to exactly what they've been doing. But we've seen more blended global footprints to help build resilience. So instead of what people were concerned about when it first struck, that everybody would retrench and bring everything to home shores, we saw an extension of companies actually open up more destinations in different pockets all around the world so that they'd actually have a more blended global footprint so that they could cope with this pandemic and its its waves and any new pandemic that, you know, might unfortunately, hopefully not come our way, so that they could have that business continuity. So we've seen that happen, and I'm sure we're going to see much more of that.
Thank you, Carrie. I think we're coming with a great recipe here. The importance of infrastructure, technology, and talent through this time, and how resilience is the core of the ingredient, and it works better when there is collaboration. So I think that's what has happened. You know, the countries where we have, or the places we have found these components have made possibility of growth, have made possibility of sustainable work and sustainable economies. And yes, at all, we are resilient in our countries. We have learned to be resilient, like you guys do in India. I mean, the reality in which we work is a talent that we need to develop since we are kids. But we also need the infrastructure, the technology, and the talent, and the vision of being a little bit more into the future. And now looking forward, we have to prioritize ESG ratings, isn't it? So
Absolutely.
I think it would be really great from the point of view of Steve. And we saw the 4 pillars: infrastructure, technology, and talent. I would like to know from an entrepreneur like you and a professional, how the talent was impacted. What happened with the remote work employees? The salaries changed? What happened?
Yeah, and so when you take a step back, and I am, as I know we have a global audience here, talking from a US business perspective. And I'm also talking from a technology company perspective, but it's my belief that the technology sector in the US is forever changed. And people who were required to go in the office, who live in very expensive cities like San Francisco, Silicon Valley, or Manhattan, have already moved to outlying areas where there's a less expensive cost of living. And I believe the new reality for US-based businesses is that in the technology sector, the hybrid environment is here to stay, more so than we even imagined prior to the pandemic. And so because of this, companies are having to change their policies and their views on accepting the distributed workforce. And it certainly affected salaries, as it's harder to find talent. And as Atul mentioned, we have the Great Resignation going on everywhere. And so you have to work harder, you have to pay more to keep your talent. And so it's really changing the game. And my company focuses on software developers and engineers throughout Latin America. And we're seeing a big differentiator for our company of why people want to work for us in Latin America is because we've embraced the remote work, the work from home model. And a lot of larger companies, Google, Microsoft, Amazon AWS, have already been notifying software developers and engineers that they're going to have to come back in the office. Now, before this Delta variant hit, it was fourth quarter, you're going to be back. Now they're softly saying January, depending on what is going on. And it's been my experience in the technology sector that technology experts in Latin America didn't have the opportunity to work from home like maybe people in the US did. And they really like it. Now, we all go stir crazy. We all go a little nuts sitting on 8-10 hours of Zoom calls a day. But it's been our experience that the technical workforce in Latin America, they love the fact that they're not having to commute an hour or two to and from work every single day. They're able to be more productive. If you're a software developer and engineer, you need your computer, your screens, you need headphones, and you need to be able to do your thing and work your magic. And if you're in the car or on a bus or on a train commuting to and from the office every day, you're losing that productivity. So I see this as even, when the pandemic is far behind us and we come back to more normalcy globally, I think this hybrid new reality is here to stay.
Hey, Steve, just quickly want to add to yours. So I run a group of global business services heads. These are senior officials in large companies that are managing both outsourcing, but also their own captive centers for technology, back office, and others. Mm-hmm. Probably between them, they have about 250,000 plus both employees and just in the GPS centers. I can tell you, and these are like the largest logistics, the largest pharma, largest CPG, and to a T, every one of them believes that they will have a hybrid workforce in their technology and business services area. All of them, right? The biggest struggle that they are having is they are not sure what the implication of that is to the way they have created, collaborated, and developed people in the past. And that, I think that story is yet to be written.
Yeah, and Atul, that's a great point. And one of the biggest challenges that this new environment brings is how do you take newly educated people out of college and train them like we used to? If you're already experienced, and at least in the technology software world, if you have 3 to 5 years experience, you're an expert because technology's changed so quickly. But how do those fresh new people to the workforce get that training in a tool? I think that is the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges out there right now. And I'm biased because I have a daughter who's a freshman in college, and it's definitely a challenge that I'm not sure. I haven't seen how that's going to be solved.
No, I can add to that. If you look at those students in the UK that actually want to take technology related courses, we've seen something like a 40% decline in technology students. So that's really, really sort of, what's the metaphor I'm looking for? But it's really, exacerbating the issue that we're facing. So looking nearshore to the UK, so obviously LATAM is far short for us, but looking nearshore to the UK, so countries like Poland and Ukraine, they are currently witnessing, or so far this year, they've witnessed an increase of 35% annual salaries for their software developers. So that's already this year, 35%. And these software developers are, according to their employers, are beginning to act like movie stars. They will do only the projects that really, really interest them, rather than, just a software development project that's out there, and are really sort of like calling the shots. So we've got that going on. We've got that going on in Poland, Ukraine, Portugal, Spain, Western Europe as well. But then when we speak to one of our members of the Global Technology and Business Services Council, so for example, BPESA in South Africa, they have recorded 35% unemployment across adults across the whole of South Africa at the moment. So it's the worst state of unemployment that they've faced for a really, really long time. Surely, we have to be able to better balance the supply and demand situation that we're facing for digital and technology talent.
And Carrie, that's an interesting stat you mentioned on software engineers and the increase in pay. I know that my company has experienced for talented software engineers in Latin America, we are paying 50 to 150% of what we did a year ago in salaries. We have just seen, because the war on talent and the issue of training that new talent and how to tackle it. So it is interesting how that supply and demand cycle has changed.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and I think it's an opportunity for the nearshore market. I mean, we have the youngest population, and we have examples. I mean, Javier here from Uruguay. I mean, the finishing schools and the skilling up of labor. I think it's really, really important. I think a lot of our countries are waking up to that opportunity. And I've seen some new laws in different governments trying to speed up the talent pool, scalability, to assure that we can take a bigger chunk of the participation of the service industry and giving work for people like Steve that it believes in Latin America and that we can do the software from here. So I think this is one of the greatest challenges and opportunities, you know, for our governments, our countries. I know that in Brazil, they are forming 1 million of programmers during this year through Microsoft. Colombia has set up a program to train programmers, and they need English. So that's the greatest challenge. So I think English and all this training is important for us. And if there's people here that are listening to us from the different chambers and government institutions from the Latin America, this is the moment. You know, I was talking with somebody that we did a study, and I said, you know what, we have an opportunity of 36 months to get a bigger chunk of the participation in the service industry. We have to invest now. And if governments do the math, what they invest in the upskilling of the labor and what they receive in taxes and the dynamism that goes through the creation of these jobs to secondary jobs and to the development of tier 2 cities, it's amazing. An example, before pandemic, tier 2 cities needed a lot of infrastructure, roads, airports, everything. Now we need infrastructure based on digital work. Tier 2 cities are possible, and we can bring opportunities and development to the further communities in our markets. So Arturo, tell us how this is happening in Dominican Republic. And we need to speed up a little. We still have 20 minutes for the last question, but now I'm giving you what is happening in Dominican Republic in the same aspect.
Gracias, Ninoska. Coincido con Steve y Atul en términos de la motivación que hay de muchos recursos y talentos en Latinoamérica para trabajar remoto, pero hay una realidad que quiero acotar de la conversación que compartían con Kerry también. Y es que cuando descubrimos acá la debilidad del recurso fuera de la oficina, y eso pasó en el sector educativo y se mostró mucho en los empleados de bajo nivel. Trabajan muy bien, eran muy efectivos en sus compañías, pero cuando llegaban al barrio, es decir, al lugar donde viven realmente, en el lugar no hay condiciones sistémicas para conectarse a trabajar, para trabajar 10 horas. Entonces, su nivel socioeconómico despliega una debilidad social que la pandemia entonces mostró en todo este periodo. Entonces tenemos el recurso que tiene, las habilidades, que tiene el conocimiento, pero que no está en la gran resignación, quiere volver al trabajo, quiere volver a la oficina, y eso ha acelerado la apertura en República Dominicana gracias al buen manejo de las vacunas por parte del gobierno. Ahora, tenemos otro problema, y que no es un problema, sino es un reto, y es el mismo comentario que hacían ustedes sobre el tema de las habilidades. Acá un neobanco contrata a un junior de Python o a un senior, pero no está buscando a un ingeniero o a un maestro de ciencias de la computación. Eso significa que está tomando al recurso por el skill, pero no al que ha pasado por una formación académica completa. Entonces nos está generando una atomización, como mencionaba anteriormente, porque los recursos están formándose en skills, pero no tan rápido como está la demanda, y al mismo tiempo el recurso que hizo el entrenamiento largo, que ahora tiene que buscar skills, entonces le falta tiempo para lograr entonces adaptarse a esta velocidad. Tenemos un gran reto ahí. Y siempre lo he dicho a las autoridades, porque en República Dominicana estamos como cubriendo esos parches que debemos enfrentar y traer a la mesa para lograr conectarnos a esta aceleración global. Por ejemplo, este año se aprobó un reglamento de teletrabajo. No teníamos una definición en nuestra ley de trabajo sobre esta característica. Desde la Cámara TIC pudimos participar con el Congreso para elaborar una ley de teletrabajo. Y ahora mismo estamos trabajando una ley de economía digital porque, de nuevo, todo esto es muy nuevo y no se había adoptado. Lo que sí vemos como una realidad es que necesitamos crear ese contrapeso que ustedes mencionaban, y creo que era Kerry, de oferta y demanda. Pero ¿qué sucede? Si nosotros entrenamos a una serie de recursos para unos skills específicos que no adoptamos ni consumimos localmente, sabemos que tenemos recursos que no van a participar en el mercado local, pero tampoco van a ganar experiencia. Entonces, lo que estamos solicitando y trabajando conjuntamente con las autoridades es en dos capas muy interesantes que quizá les pueda ayudar a ustedes también a tener un contexto de lo que está pasando en nuestro país. Primero, acá hay una ley de mecenazgo cultural o una ley de cultura que da recursos a los gestores culturales. Ahora un gestor cultural lo que queremos es que sea un ente de producción de contenido digital que puede exportar también. Entonces, un creador, una persona con habilidades, no necesariamente tiene a nivel educativo, somos binarios, 1 o 0. Es decir, o usted estudia o no estudia. Y el skill no está visualizado como conocimiento. Entonces, lo que estamos buscando con esta ley es poder decir, ok, una maestría en ciencia de la computación, ¿cuántos skills tiene? 78, perfecto, pero un recurso con 4 puede llevar alimento, 4 skills puede llevar alimento a su familia. Y esto ayuda a crear un encadenamiento en donde podamos insertar al del skill, que es muy valorado en el mercado exterior, pero aquí no le estamos dando valor hasta hace quizá 36 o 48 meses atrás. Entonces, el mercado técnico creemos que si lo fortalecemos y ayudamos a comprender las debilidades socioeconómicas y sistémicas que fomenten el teletrabajo, pero al mismo tiempo tomando en cuenta las debilidades de conectividad que existen en estos lugares donde hay situación de pobreza, entonces podemos entonces tener una mayor incorporación de esa masa que tiene habilidades y que estaría disponible para el mercado laboral.
Gracias, Arturo. I think Atul says here, you know, governments need to step up. And I think what it's needed right now, you know, I mean, for all these people, we need to do that. And I still believe that skilling up of talent pool is important. I mean, as Carrie said, you know, we have people that are not as young, so we need to form the other ones and change the, you know, skilling up of talent pool will be really great. And also we need to rethink education. It's needed 4 years, 5 years. Should we change that? Technical skills? I think it's really, really important. So now we are really going fast. So I'm going to give each of you 3 to 5 minutes to tell us what challenges and opportunities you see ahead. And I'm going to finish with you, Atul. I think I want you to be the last one. But I would like to tell me, I mean, Steve, what do you see as the challenges and opportunities? Do you want to talk about the employees and how we engage them post-COVID, or how we do this?
Sure. And this is something that I am passionate about and really focus on. Every bit of research I can get is how do you keep employees engaged in a fully remote environment when we're all on more Zoom calls than we've ever been on and more meetings that we've ever been on. And I'm constantly immersing myself in this topic. And with the great resignation, once again, as Atul mentioned, and the challenge of employees open to switching jobs more than they ever have, you have to really think outside of the box for employee engagement. We do a lot of different things where we have game days. We have certain days of the week that our HR lead always sponsors different games. We do games with large groups of people on Zoom, which takes some creativity where we have over 100 participants on Zoom. We have implemented and are building out strategies to take the virtual world past this Zoom environment, but into kind of the next generation of Zoom, where you have virtual office buildings and you're able to interact with people in a different manner And we have speed networking things that we do within our company so people can meet more people. We're very adamant. We think Slack is one of the greatest tools because you can, it reduces meetings, it reduces emails, and it allows direct communication. And so being a forward thinker, staying ahead, I've already mentioned in my world of software development and engineers and technology, I'm a believer that this remote environment is here to stay, and it's a bigger challenge than ever keeping employees. From industry data we've seen in throughout Latin America, the attrition rate for companies of software developers and engineers is in excess of 20 to 40% in this crazy time. We have worked our butts off in my company. Pre-pandemic, we were very good at that. But post-pandemic, we've been able to keep our attrition right around 7%, which is still higher than I like. But in this new world where attrition rates are so high, I'm that employee experience, keeping them engaged, making them not feel isolated. I believe these are some of the biggest challenges we have ahead as employers to embrace. And I also think, and I'm a big believer of this, that the executive leaders, the CEOs, the senior leaders have to work 10 times as hard to make sure everybody feels engaged, because it's not as easy as it used to be to run in-person town halls and have a roadshow where everybody can meet you. So those are some of the biggest challenges I see ahead, that I'm a huge believer that to be successful in this next era, you have to, that's a challenge that has to be, if you're not addressing it already, you're behind the curve.
Thank you, Steve. I mean, your expression brights up when you talk about your talent and how you like to have them engaged and everything. I can see that is something that is really important for you as a CEO, and that talks a lot about your company and why you are able to keep the 7% compared to the competition. Thank you so much for the sharing. I think we did a study among companies of the BPO industry, and we came with the number that 65% of them will continue in a hybrid mode after the pandemics. They have seen that it works. And for them, it's really easy, cost efficiency, KPI efficiency, everything. So I think it's here to stay. And yes, the talent, it's now our priority. So going with that, Carrie, what are the challenges that you're foreseeing in the future? We have 3 minutes for your response.
Okay, so I completely agree with everything that Steve's been saying, so I don't want to go back over that ground. Any employer that forces somebody to go back and work full-time from an office is going to be a very foolish employer and will be losing their employees without a shadow of a doubt. But yeah, I'd probably like to talk about the opportunity for this region in both United Kingdom and the rest of Europe. I think we haven't really outsourced or offshored anywhere near as much work to this region as we have to most other regions around the world. So there obviously is a huge opportunity, because I've talked already about the huge skills crisis we've got here. We are looking for talent, and we will take that talent from anywhere around the world, for sure. So at the moment, India is by far the biggest delivery destination for the UK, with about 40%. And then you've got Poland with about 20%, and the remaining 40% could be anywhere else around the world. So, so huge opportunity, obviously, for countries like Spain and Portugal as well, because of the natural sort of like language skills. And can you still hear me?
Yes, Carrie, we're hearing you.
Okay, sorry, everything froze on my screen then. Thank you. But I think it is the opportunity to raise the profile of the region into the UK and Western Europe. And I completely agree with the point Atul made right at the very beginning, and that is the importance of ESG. So that is like the highest agenda item outside of talent in our member companies. So it is really important to build the profile of the country and for the companies within the region of the region and for the companies in the region to understand what are the triggers for UK and European companies when it comes to being willing to invest in different companies. So, you know, we've got the whole supply chain fourth party assurance. We want to make sure that any companies that we partner with and that our partners partner with, and it goes down and down and down the supply chain, that they have no modern slavery, that they are adhering to, you know, no single-use plastics, you know, and all of these green, ethical, inclusion and diversity agenda items are so critically important. So, yeah.
Nosotros tenemos que habilitar un encadenamiento digital interno
In
de
progress.
nivel 1 y evitarle pagarle como si fuera nivel 10 o 100. ¿Por qué? Porque el mercado, como está buscando el talento escaso, está sobrepagando al talento y le está haciendo daño, porque no está dejando que se desarrolle. Esto con una política que estamos planteando desde la Cámara TIC es poder desarrollar un circuito donde las industrias que necesiten recursos más junior puedan ser las industrias del first landing, el primer empleo. Y esta, como desarrolló China hace unos 10 años, un programa en donde el proveedor le facilita al cliente y el cliente le devuelve al proveedor el talento después que crece. Entonces generamos un encadenamiento en donde podemos desarrollar el recurso, pero mantener el conocimiento en crecimiento para prepararlo para el mercado global. Con esto, entonces alineamos la oferta local, la necesidad de gobierno, la oferta de exportación y evidentemente la oferta de la gran tecnológica, que evidentemente lo que queremos generar luego son emprendedores, personas que creen y generen compañías que produzcan crecimiento y desarrollo humano. Si creamos este round robin, hemos visto el deseo de las autoridades de incorporarse, está Caribbean Sports apoyándonos en esta visión. Entendemos que podemos fortalecer nuestra posición porque tenemos una localización natural como país que nos permite aprovechar las características del trabajo remoto y de la exportación de servicios, y creo que esta es nuestra gran oportunidad. Gracias.
Gracias, Arturo. We tried to do that years ago with Central America. Good luck with that. It was great, but it was a challenge. We wanted to get together with El Salvador, Honduras, and Nicaragua, trying to leverage many engineers and programmers to be able to supply to big markets. And it was a challenge. Maybe in this occasion, it's only one country, so it's going to be easier. So with that, and before giving you the word, Atul, I wanna just to take some words that we have talked about it today, because I want you to do the closing and I don't want to interrupt after your presentation. So I think it's important for us to understand now that infrastructure, technology, and talent are really important for us. ESG ratings are really becoming important in the future. Talent, open talent, the power shift from the employer to the employee, the need of training people in the short term, questioning the duration of university time and rethinking about education on what we need, loving our talent as Steve did with his face, his expression. I mean, he just brightened up talking about how he has engaged the people in his company. I think this is the future and something governments need to take action. So with that, Atul, I give you the last moment of this panel for you to talk about the opportunities and challenges ahead. And I thank everybody in the panel because I don't want to interrupt after you. And so we can proceed after you to the next part of the agenda, okay?
Thank you, Ninoshka. Thank you, Carrie, Arturo, and Steve. Just great experience, great advice. I want to start by reminding everybody that the only thing that limits us is because we put limits on ourselves. Because we spend time talking about challenges and we pay not enough attention to opportunities. There were a number of changes that our world has been seeing, and what COVID did is actually accelerated them. And let's talk about those opportunities. Because challenges we will overcome if we realize what the opportunities are. First is, businesses have been going through a tremendous transformation, a transformation where they're moving from what used to be an analog world to a very digital world. And the reality is that's what made some of these boundaries disappear. And now, as we saw during COVID, even the office boundaries disappeared, right? So based on that, the first opportunity we have to think about is, how do we enable more to enter the digital change, right? Call center to chats, right? In an office to be able to handle it remotely. From a new mother who could not be in an office can actually find the time to still be part of our work environment. For a physically disabled person who could not travel can be part of our educational environment. So the first part we need to remember is this great opportunity of digital transformation that's taking place. The second thing I would say is we're going through a very massive social transformation. It's been in years in coming, but again, it's been accelerated, right? It's the difference between the haves and the have-nots. The ones that have access to technology, to tools, to the rest of our population that does not. And we see the differences in Argentina versus El Salvador versus Brazil versus Colombia. And governments have a very unique opportunity with not a lot of expense. There's major corporations that are willing to give their resources and time to enable that digital transformation because it actually serves them really, really well. So the second piece is to think about the whole social transformation that's taking place, whether that's diversity, equity, inclusion, what the location is doing, how you're making people enter the workforce, and really dealing with everybody. This is not about just a 4-year degree. This is about the rest of the population. I saw some great programs in LATAM. I remember Hello English as such, where high school students being trained to enter the call center market. What about chat, right? They can be using digital channels. They don't have to simply be using voice channel. So the business transformation, digital, social transformation that's taking place. And then the final piece I would say is there's a major corporate transformation that's taking place. More and more companies are recognizing that it is not enough to just pay attention to shareholders. They have a responsibility to stakeholders. And this is where ESG has really played a major role in corporations recognizing they need to do that. So I would go back to every location and corporations to say, cost matters. That's how outsourcing got started. But reality is the world is very different today. Cost is now secondary. What matters is talent and access to that talent. So Ninoshka, as you kind of reinforced, I want to leave the message again. How do you engage whole of society to ensure you have the infrastructure, to make sure you have the talent development, and finally, that you have the tools to enable both corporations to access that talent, but more importantly, for that talent to be ready to be accessed. So I think we have tremendous opportunities that COVID has actually presented to us.
That's great. Opportunities, opportunities, opportunities. Thank you to all of you. Thank you, Alice. Thank you for this event. And to all the people that has listened to us through this hour. A big hug from Latin America to you.
Thanks, everyone. Be safe, be well.
Muchas gracias al equipo de Ninoshka, a todos los moderadores, a Kerry, a Tul, a Steve, a Arturo. Ahora tocó la presentación del libro, así que hemos invitado a Juan, que va a conducir este panel, este microespacio. Adelante, Juan.
Muchísimas gracias, Javier, y qué honor poder hablar de este maravilloso libro y justamente que como consultor y mentor, Javier, has creado algo maravilloso, sobre todo como especialista en lo que es servicios globales, ¿no? Que has estudiado tanto un letrado en la especialidad, ¿no? Así que damos lanzamiento al libro La nueva era de los servicios globales y poder entrevistarte y saber un poco más sobre lo que está pasando y lo que todos queremos saber, ¿no? El futuro.
Muchas gracias Juan. Sí, este libro básicamente el año pasado fue desafiante para todos a nivel mundial. Y si alguien, es bastante sencillo pensar que Javier, amante de los servicios o apasionado de los servicios, puede escribir un libro de servicios. Ahora, quizás lo interesante es que el año pasado, cuando a finales de febrero directamente, aún no había llegado la pandemia en Uruguay, alguien me regaló el tema de pensar qué iba a pasar de aquí a 20 años en materia de servicios. Originalmente se trató de una propuesta, de un estudio que se lo llevó el COVID, que el estudio no se hizo, pero me pareció tan interesante el planteo y el desafío, amo los desafíos, y eso fue lo que me llevó a empezar a estudiar. Empezar a estudiar primero la metodología para pensar cómo abordar esto del futuro, y es así que empezamos a entrevistar, mientras que el mundo estaba en cuarentenado, a muchos líderes globales, y entre los cuales hoy día está Atul con nosotros acá. Atul fue uno de los primeros que respondió en una pequeña encuesta que hicimos, y otros como Arturo, por ejemplo, también estuvimos hablando con él, y gente de otros paneles que vamos a ver también acá. Así que el desafío el tener un desafío fue para mí el propósito de mi vida el año pasado. Y eso marcó un hito súper importante y demostró mi capacidad de resiliencia. Y quizás en algunos países, sé que, por ejemplo en Argentina, tú sos de Argentina, pasaron muchos meses encerrados en sus casas en cuarentenas. En Uruguay no teníamos cuarentena. Y en mi vida he sido un privilegiado, hasta el punto de que en Uruguay no tuvimos una cuarentena, pero estuvimos autorrecluidos durante 2 meses, en abril y mayo del año pasado. Y yo me fui al campo, y en el campo tenía mucho espacio, pero la mente a veces se achica, y por lo tanto el libro fue una construcción y una forma de conducir y salir adelante. Así que ese fue el propósito de tener, de tener este libro, que hoy día es una realidad, acá lo vemos, y que nos sentimos muy contentos. Así que muchas gracias.
Javier, cuando uno construye, porque un libro es una construcción, ¿qué fue lo que más te llamó la atención cuando estabas investigando a tanta gente, ¿no? Porque son más de 70 líderes especialistas en logística, ¿no? En servicios globales. ¿Qué fue eso que vos decís, esto es el oro, esto es la medalla, esto es lo que más valor le doy a mi libro, ¿no?
Bueno, una de las cosas que supe que el año pasado, como dije, empezamos en marzo las entrevistas, y una de las cosas que más me llamó la atención, que en el marco de una recesión global y de todas las economías que se venían a pique en todos nuestros países, este sector, las empresas me decían, yo contacté, hablé con básicamente empresas de tecnologías de la información y con empresas de procesos de negocios, estas empresas me decían que seguían contratando gente, no al ritmo obviamente que tenían pensado al inicio, pero seguían contratando gente, y que la productividad había aumentado. Obviamente que estas dos cosas, o esto de la productividad, el aumento de la productividad, no ha sido inocuo, porque ha generado estrés en algunas personas y demás, pero el hecho de que este sector se mostrara resiliente y nosotros lo pudiéramos constatar ya a mitad del año pasado fue un dato, creo, sumamente importante. Y a final del año, en un evento que hicimos con el Global Council, donde Kerry es el que la preside, que hace unos minutos estaba de panelista, me tocó moderar un panel donde estaban UPAP y otros líderes globales, Y una de las cosas que surgió ahí, del estudio que se hizo de Everest, es que coincidente con lo que nosotros habíamos visto en América Latina, que el sector había crecido en contrataciones, había seguido creciendo con contrataciones, y se espera que, que este año también crezca. Entonces eso me pareció sumamente importante y novedoso frente al mundo que se desplomaba, ¿no?
Cuando vi el mensaje de la Cámara Argentina de Comercio cruzando con esta propuesta de la nueva era de los servicios globales, a mí me llamó muchísimo la atención porque me pareció una idea genial. Algo de hablar sobre el futuro es sumamente superador. Pero para los que no son tan animados, ¿por qué un empresario o un emprendedor debería leer tu libro? ¿Qué podría encontrar? ¿No? ¿Qué esencia podría despertar en él?
Muchas gracias, Juan. Bueno, si el primer mensaje es ahí, de todas estas entrevistas, de todo lo que estudiamos, es que construimos un modelo, en la cual ya llamamos de paga, que tiene 7 características y está basado básicamente en 3 grandes pilares, que es la tecnología, de lo cual se habló y va a seguir hablando en particular en este segundo módulo que vendrá después de nosotros, de los modelos de negocios, que es un cambio, ha habido en los últimos tiempos un cambio bastante importante en los modelos de negocios, cómo las empresas pueden abordar estos sectores y salir triunfantes en el mundo. Pero una clave de lo que hemos observado y nosotros proyectamos del futuro es cómo se integra el ser humano en esta ecuación. Y lo que nosotros estamos diciendo es que las empresas que sobrevivan en el futuro serán aquellas que tengan entonces la tecnología, la última tecnología, los modelos más disruptivos, pero serán aquellas que integren al ser humano en sus recursos humanos, sus clientes, en sus comunidades, también considerando el medio ambiente, las que van a ser las verdaderamente exitosas, las que van a generar valor. Entonces, para aquellos empresarios o emprendedores que están pensando cómo agregar valor, cómo diferenciarme en los próximos años, bueno, nosotros vemos que el tema del ser humano, de la inclusión del ser humano, es un elemento clave. Y no estamos diciendo de la transformación de una empresa en una ONG o en una empresa de filantropía. No, estamos diciendo de ganar dinero, pero a la vez de ganar dinero, tener presente los impactos en los recursos humanos, en los clientes, en las comunidades y en el medio ambiente. Estamos convencidos que por ahí van a ir los tiros y eso lo vemos también en las nuevas generaciones, los millennials, los centennials, los nativos digitales, que están interesados precisamente en crear y forman parte de este tipo de empresas.
Justamente los primeros que se despiertan son los innovadores, ¿no? Después los entrepreneurs, los empresarios y después la gente de la política. ¿Por qué hacer de políticas públicas, por qué alguien de políticas públicas lo debería tener presente o generar que lo puedan utilizar, ¿no? ¿Cómo podríamos llevar esto a algo más global?
Sí, el libro tiene al final un capítulo específico que es cómo crear un ecosistema en servicios globales, y esto está orientado para aquellos que tienen que tomar decisiones de la política pública. Y en general, cuando nosotros hemos hecho diferentes estrategias a nivel de los países, y en general lo que nos preguntan es cuáles son los incentivos que se tienen que aplicar. Pero nosotros entendemos que hay que hacer un abordaje integral y no solo de incentivos económicos, porque si fuera solo de incentivos económicos, algunos países que los tienen estarían en una situación mucho más desarrollada que otros que no los tienen. Y entonces, de todas formas, hay ahí lo que se habló en este primer panel, por ejemplo, anterior, hay algunas cosas que surgen y que son relevantes poner en la agenda de la política pública, de la estrategia de los que tienen que tomar decisión. Uno es qué va a pasar con estos nativos digitales, lo que nosotros llamamos del microsourcing. Hay gente que hoy día está saliendo de las empresas, está abandonando las empresas nacionales o internacionales en nuestros países para pasar a trabajar de manera remota con otras a nivel internacional que están ubicadas en Estados Unidos, en Reino Unido o donde sea. Y estos chicos pueden crear su empresa directamente en Estonia, pueden crear en Delaware, lo pueden crear en Dinamarca, y pueden contratar desde ahí a los recursos y donde estén, no importando dónde estén esos recursos. Entonces, si nuestras autoridades no tienen presente estas realidades, va a ser muy difícil que nosotros podamos competir con estas jurisdicciones o con estos países que ya han visto que es un modelo que funciona. Entonces, hay muchísimos puntos para que esto de la nueva era de los servicios globales y los impactos que tiene en los emprendedores y en la economía en general se deben poner en la agenda, y eso es una de las cosas que nosotros invitamos a los tomadores de decisión a que los tengan presentes, porque por ahí van los temas y por ahí vamos a generar empleo y crecimiento.
Al comienzo mencionabas que te motivan los desafíos. Tenés un Master Business Administration, tenés un International Business especializado en lo que es servicios globales, tuviste un premio de lo que es exportación de servicios. Casi año a año un nuevo desafío vino a tu vida. ¿Cuál es el próximo? Si podés contarlo, ¿no? Porque me gustaría tener la primicia, pero en este caso no la tengo.
Bueno, te lo reconozco. Los desafíos, como dije al principio, son mis zanahorias, es un motivo para seguir viviendo. Y en este caso lo que estoy interesado en hacer es más universidades en América Latina se integren estos temas en sus currículas, porque estoy convencido que el próximo Jeff Bezos de América Latina va a surgir de servicios globales y va a surgir incorporando el tema de lo que nosotros llamamos el antropocentrismo o lo que también llamamos el conscious sourcing. Entonces, mi motivación ahora es hacer presentaciones del libro e involucrar a más universidades en más países en América Latina, y esperemos que en cada uno de los países. Estoy convencido que con la ayuda de los amigos de Alex podremos hacerlo.
Espectacular, espectacular. Y lo más importante, ¿dónde encontramos el libro, Javier?
Bueno, el libro es el resultado de lo que yo hablo precisamente allí. El libro ha sido editado en España por una multinacional que es Penguin Random House. Las copias que yo tengo acá han sido impresas ahí en tu país, en Argentina, pero si vos la comprás, las tenés que comprar en Amazon, y Amazon directamente te lo hace on demand el servicio, tanto el libro físico como virtual, y te lo envía a tu casa o lo podés descargar vos directamente de la plataforma. Así que el libro es un ejemplo de los temas de los cuales hablamos en él.
Bueno, Javier, muchísimas gracias. Un gran placer la invitación, estar con consultores, mentores, especialistas y sobre todo gente tan importante de este maravilloso panel. Damos cierre a este panel y le damos la palabra al especialista Santiago Pinzón. Javier, te felicito por el libro, la verdad maravilloso tener la oportunidad de conocer la mente de 70 líderes especialistas en lo que es global, servicios globales, y sobre todo tu hijo, este libro que tanto te da la expresión de conocerte un poco más a vos.
Muchísimas gracias, Juan, y bienvenido, Santiago.
Bienvenido, Santiago, te doy el lugar y el espacio todo tuyo.
Gracias, Juan. Hola, Javier. Felicitaciones por el libro. Una vez más nos pone la tarea de leer. Creo que se me va a caer el pelo de tanto leer cosas de Javier, entonces ahí vamos a hacer el esfuerzo de estar a la altura. Bueno, un saludo para todos. Estoy viendo que están conectándose nuestros panelistas. Ya veo 1, 2, 3, son 5. No sé si Javier me puede llegar a confirmar porque no manejo la producción acá. Si está, veo a Ramiro, veo a María, veo a... se me escapan. No veo a Nupam. Sería bueno que pusieran el nombre. Hola, Ramiro. Sí, pongan el nombre porque creo que... Maria, can you put your name on your screen? Because with so many windows, so many faces, it's difficult to find everybody here. Javier o producción me confirma si están todos porque no los veo.
Sí, está Anupam. Please, Anupam, perhaps you can rename, please.
Hi, Anupam. Now I can see you.
Yes, okay. I will do that.
Wonderful. Okay, so we're going to have Spanglish as a panel here. We're going to do Spanish and English at the same time, and you will have the capacity of interpreters, and you already see on the screen that we have an additional interpreter to have more inclusion on this panel. So everybody is ready. Happy to be here. My name is Santiago Pinzon. I'm the VP of Digital Transformation at ANDI. ANDI is the National Business Association of Colombia, and we are very proud to help ALES to grow and obviously connect on this important event in terms of the global service capacity and industry that is obviously in a very important times nowadays. So I'm going to save some time, and I'm not going to introduce each member of the panel. I will let each one of you to do it. That way we save some time and we are more cost effective now that we just heard the panel previously to us talking about the opportunities on nearshore and all those things that we're probably going to embrace here when we talk about digital transformation as well. So as you know, our panel is ICT applied to traditional sectors to export value added activities. It's a very important topic. We talk about this yesterday with our panelists and our colleagues that it can be so many things when talk about this issue. So I will probably do my best here to try to do a dialogue and help you understand what we can elaborate together with all these wonderful people that are joining the panel. So let's start. I will go and ask my first general question to everybody. And since we are a gentleman, we will have Maria to answer first. And then we build from there. And basically, we can have this conversation as smooth as possible. So Maria, now that we are starting this and we just heard a very important context of what is going on globally, how do you see, and because of the topic of our panel, the traditional sectors adapting to the digital economy? So many things have changed, but how you can elaborate your reflections or thoughts about this? And happy to have you here.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. When we talk about traditional, I think traditional has lost any relevance now, and how we balance traditional with services is really important. And I mean, listening to the other panelists before, they talked about upscaling. I think upscaling has now become very important. So services that were required before really looked at, a cheap labor market. And the processes that were done before were pretty mundane. Now, what we have to look at is what is the world asking for now that everybody else is going digital? What are some of the problems that companies are having that they need to fix that, a nearshore can solve for that? And when I think of my own clients and in the Caribbean, and Pan will know this as well as working in the Caribbean is probably about 10 years behind everybody else with digital. And the biggest complication I see for companies going digital is data. So one of the things the traditional models have to look at is what are some of the issues and problems. So when I think of data cleansing is a big issue that provides an opportunity. The last panel was saying, let's stop looking at the challenges and let's look at the opportunities. So there are some opportunities that traditional services have to now look at. And if a bot or technology and platforms are really doing the mundane tasks now, what a service, what a client is looking for is that value add. So, everybody uses India. We use India and EY. So just for background, I'm a partner in EY strategy and transactions. We use, India, and, we used to use them even in the Caribbean. But when we wanted them to do the analysis on top of just the data entry, we found that sometimes it was lacking. So I will close with, traditional models need to look at the value added services that clients really want. So you also have to bring the technology into the business processes because again, cost now is not just about labor costs, it's about productivity and efficiency. And that's what you're getting from technology. So I think traditional models really have to relook where are the issues, what are the problems, and how can we now upskill our resources to bring solutions.
Wonderful, wonderful. You forgot to mention who you are and what you represent. It's important for everybody, so you know everybody here.
Partner of EY Strategy and Transactions. I work across the Caribbean from Jamaica to Trinidad, including Suriname and Guyana and the Dutch Caribbean. I help my clients with digital strategy and transformation.
Beautiful. That way we understand here how we have different perspectives. Thank you, Maria. Well, let's go to Ramiro. What are your thoughts in terms of, well, Maria just gave us a very good layout and very important recommendations. What are your thoughts about it?
Exactly. Well, thank you, Santiago. And first of all, I want to congratulate Javier. Thank you. Wonderful book. I know I have read the book already, and congratulations. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And to all of you, I'm delighted that even in this pandemic era that you are taking the time to invest in yourself, learning a little bit more. So I am Ramiro Montealegre. I am a professor of information systems and the department chair of information technology at the University of Colorado Boulder. And my research the past 15 years have been in exactly this idea, which is how companies use technology in times of uncertainty. And what I think is fascinating, what we see is that prior to pandemic, right, we were using technology following our industrial time view of the world, using technology simply to do our processes more efficient, cost savings. Let's take a look, for example, a supermarket. They used to have technology, for example, to capture when you are selling things in the supermarket. You can inventory control, maybe a database to understand your employees who's on vacations, who have to be here. Everything is to support the physical processes. During COVID, as we saw, because of the social distancing and you cannot be in the supermarket, we began to look alternatives using technology. For example, I order online and I pick up my groceries from the supermarket. So we began to think in different ways because we couldn't be in a physical place. What I think is fascinating moving forward is those experiments that allow us to survive during this episode of pandemic. We have to see what makes sense. How many of our customers don't want to go to the supermarket and maybe order online? How many of us wants to work from home? And you know, maybe only 20% of our time or 40% of our time to be in a physical office to understand what other colleagues are doing. And I think that's the challenge and the opportunity that exists. Because I agree with Maria, there's no such thing as traditional, is the opportunity for companies to see how can we break boundaries that before we assume that that's the way we do things. Thank you, Santiago. I'll leave it there.
Very good start. Thank you, Ramiro. Well, let's go to Anupam then. What are your thoughts about how, well, you know the question. I don't want to repeat it.
Thank you, Santiago, and welcome everyone. So I'm a partner with Avasant. I manage our global digital practice, and we work with some of the largest companies in the world, helping them through their digital journeys. We also work with governments and other public sector entities in more than 60 countries. So digital has been real for us for last 5 or 8 years. But what COVID has done is it's overnight shifted our mind share, whereas my previous speaker said, everything today is digital. Every business today is digital, right? So in ways that we couldn't imagine, COVID has become the chief transformation officer. We're seeing unprecedented growth and acceleration in adoption of digital technologies across various industries. So to the question about how are traditional businesses adopting, the reality is today that whichever industry you're in today, if you do not quickly embrace digital and realize that you're living in a virtual economy where your customers, your suppliers, your employees, all the stakeholders want to interact with you through digital channels, no matter where they are, then that business is going to be extinct. So what's happening is across different industries, we're seeing this ripple effect. And as a result, technology has become the underpinning of every sector today. And what this is, while this has posed a lot of challenges for businesses, it's also opened up tremendous opportunities for these businesses, because today the world is your market, right? You're no longer limited by your physical presence. And the interesting part is that we're calling this the great flip, because companies can today hire people anywhere, right? Because you can work remotely. But on the other hand, employees can apply for the same job anywhere in the world. And we're seeing this happening right in front of our eyes. In fact, I have a nephew in India who came out of a good college. He would have typically come to the US, work for Microsoft in Seattle, earned a great salary, or he may have stayed in India to work for Microsoft India and earned a salary in India. Guess what? Today, he's working for Microsoft in Seattle, working in India, earning that salary he would have earned in Seattle, right? And doing a job and interacting with his colleagues in Seattle remotely. So the table stakes have changed and every business is being impacted. And I'm sure we'll talk more about it as we go along in terms of the impact on various sectors.
Agreed. Completely. Good testimony. Thanks for the example. Richard, pasamos al español. ¿Cuál es tu lectura entonces en términos de cómo se están acomodando y adaptando los sectores tradicionales a esta economía digital?
Bueno, muchas gracias, Santiago, por la invitación y por poder estar acá. Antes que nada, decirles, mi nombre es Richard Silvera, me dedico a la tecnología NFT, de Non-Fungible Token. Es una tecnología basada en blockchain y mi sector es el arte digital, ¿sí? 100% arte digital. Entonces, mi sector anterior era más el arte tradicional. Arte tradicional lo podría llamar, en mi caso, era audiovisual. Hacía comerciales de televisión, estaba en las industrias cinematográficas, pero también puede ser la creación de cuadros, de pinturas, de fotografías, etc. Es un sector muy tradicionalista, ¿sí? Que está enfocado quizás en el área digital para vender un poco sus obras, pero básicamente lo estaban utilizando como un sector de e-commerce, ¿sí? Hago un cuadro, lo vendo a través de un e-commerce y ese cuadro es enviada a la otra persona, por ejemplo, en China. Sin embargo, con esto del COVID, hubo una gran disrupción en el mercado. Primero, para empezar, en mi caso, me quedé casi 6 meses sin trabajo porque vino el COVID, entonces las producciones audiovisuales se frenaron totalmente. Eso hizo que todos los artistas, como yo, tuviéramos que salir a buscar otro método de empleo que tenga que estar vinculado con el arte. En mi caso, pasó de que yo estaba ya entrado en la tecnología blockchain desde 2017 y a finales del año pasado surge una nueva tecnología llamada NFT que nos permite a los artistas vender nuestras obras de arte a otras personas en todo el mundo por un medio digital donde no solamente le enviamos un archivo. Por ejemplo, si yo hago una obra de arte, tengo el JPG, no solamente envío un archivo, sino que envío también la propiedad del archivo. Entonces eso hace que otra persona pueda revender ese archivo o quedársela de por vida. ¿tá? Entonces eso fue una gran disrupción en el mercado del arte tradicional que hizo que todos los artistas pudiéramos vender nuestras obras, ¿sí? En un momento en donde realmente el trabajo escaseaba y donde los artistas plásticos no vendían sus obras de arte, porque como todos sabemos, cuando hay una crisis mundial, lo primero que se deja de vender son las obras de arte y todo tipo de confort, al igual que los viajes, etc. Entonces, realmente vi que con esto del COVID hubo una transformación en los sectores tradicionales y sobre todo en mi sector del arte fue donde yo vi la disrupción totalmente, una nueva tecnología salió para que podamos estar trabajando e incluso ganando mejor que antes.
Fascinante, Richard. Espectacular el ejemplo para entenderlo todos acá. Y sigo en nuestra versión de Spanglish con Mario. Mario, ¿cuál es tu lectura y cuál es tu aproximación sobre estos cambios? Y bienvenido.
Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo están? Bueno, primero me presento, yo soy Mario Bustamante, yo soy fundador de una startup que se llama Instacrops. Nosotros ayudamos a los agricultores en Latinoamérica a que ellos puedan maximizar sus cosechas, aumentar su rendimiento, reduciendo principalmente sus costos de recursos, por ejemplo, el uso de agua. Una de las cosas más impactantes que hemos logrado en estos casi 6 años es que a la fecha hemos ahorrado algo así como 5,5 billones de litros de agua en riego, lo que equivale al uso de agua de 40 años del consumo de Nueva York. Entonces, ¿por qué estoy citando esto? Porque la tecnología llegó al campo, a la agricultura, que es una industria que puede ser poco sexy para quizás los inversionistas digitales, en la que, de hecho, es la segunda menos digital del planeta, pero que ha tenido un aumento importante en su penetración, y sobre todo a propósito de la pandemia. Nosotros ya tenemos presencia en 8 países de la región. Hace poco salimos de Y Combinator, que es la aceleradora de negocios más importante del planeta, que es algo que nos tiene muy orgullosos porque desde Latinoamérica estamos empujando, estamos creando esta revolución de la industria agrícola, porque es una de las que se tiene que digitalizar sí o sí, ya que los alimentos, con pandemia, sin pandemia, con holocausto zombie, con terremoto, con lo que sea, uno tiene que producir alimentos y tenemos que comer siempre. Entonces, nuestra visión es esa, es poder ayudar a los agricultores a que se digitalicen, porque hoy en día ya no es quizá una necesidad, hoy en día ya estamos obligados. Entonces, muchos de los procesos agrícolas que se hacen de forma rudimentaria o que tienen mucho tiempo, que son poco eficientes, es lo que hemos estado trabajando en este último tiempo.
Spectacular. Well, now do you see it? You have agriculture, you see art, you see nearshore, you see a combination of things in Latin America and the Caribbean. It's amazing, and we're just getting started. So we have half the glass full. So let's go back to Ramiro now. This is also the first round, general questions, then we go to particular questions. So Ramiro, now that we just heard about these, different perspectives, what are and let's put it this way, are we going to be joining the party, or are we going to be left behind again in the party of nearshore? What are your thoughts in terms of the opportunities building in that world, the opportunities of nearshore after COVID?
Exactly. Very good. I think that's the beautiful opportunity that we have now. Yes, I think as we have talked about in answering the first question, technology, and all of you understand how technology accelerated during this COVID episode, right? We are using Zoom. We are able to communicate very nicely with other people. There was people who learned for the first time to use YouTube to learn how to cut my hair because it's getting too long, right? And what is interesting is, of course, that changed the perception of people, right? As we talk about, I think it's going to be really difficult for anybody to go back and say, yeah, I'm looking forward to commute every day to work, to be there at 8 o'clock and work every day from my work, right? So the perception, it changed. Now, our responsibilities as managers is not just buying the technology, it's solving the problems. I see many companies that now they say, for example, darn, now that I have people working from home, I don't have to pay the rent of the office. So saving money, right? But that's a very myopic way. Why? Because, yeah, you might save money in renting. You have to spend money still training people in how distributed work will work, right? You have to have still security to make sure that the communication is secure, to make sure that people have the correct equipment to work from home, right? So the reason why I'm saying this is because it's not that we are going to be left behind if we don't buy technology. I think we're going to be left behind if we don't have the leadership to understand, and the managerial setting to understand how to, what Javier was talking about in the presentation of his book. It's not just the technology, it's at the intersection of people and organizations, right? It's what I call technology endowment, which is not only the technology, but also leadership, talent, and resources. And I will leave it there.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now let's see, Maria, what are your thoughts in terms of the nearshore opportunities now that these traditional sectors are adapting and changing and obviously evolving?
Yeah, well, I'll go a little different. I mean, some of the challenges that I see, just going on to what we were saying before, is clients are now able to, and I think one of the other speakers in one of the other panels mentioned this, Anupam was actually saying it, people can hire people anywhere in the world. So I could tell you, I've lost staff to cryptocurrency companies. They live in Trinidad and they're serving them, and I'm sure it's at a cheaper cost. That may have gone to a nearshore processing unit before because it's accounting services, right? They are not even accountants. He's not even an accountant. He's an MBA mathematician. That's his background. So I think one of the challenges is even getting the right resources to stay relevant. Because what's going to happen is the same resources that you would have been using to give these value add services, even if you want to upscale, are now going to be available to the rest of the world. So our advantages of being able to have cheaper labor, and even if we upscale it, we actually have, at least in the Caribbean, the education level is also very high. The literacy is very high. So one of the challenges I see that we have, and Jamaica is very, very big in the nearshore services, is that keeping those resources is going to be more challenging now as the rest of the world try to get those same resources. Another challenge that I see is that for us to remain competitive, it goes back to the upskilling. And the education system hasn't changed, and I'll speak specifically about the Caribbean. Unless the education system changes drastically and be disrupted, we are not going to be able to have the labor requirements and skill levels to even continue nearshoring. So I really see for us, literacy is no longer math and English. Literacy now has to be digital. And the Caribbean has been very slow in changing the education system so that we can supply these services to the rest of the world. So that's really where I see the challenges in the current, and again, as the pandemic, everybody has, upgraded. Everybody has gone digital. So if you don't have digital skills, you almost have nothing to sell.
I agree. And I think that's important to mention that you need to change the way you educate and evolve to have more ed tech. As you have health tech,
exactly.
Tech, you need to move forward and change and approach the digital transformation of the education. What about you, Anupam? What are your thoughts? You are on mute.
Sorry. So first of all, I think we're moving into a new reality where it's no longer about nearshore or offshore. It's about global shore. Companies are hiring everywhere. Yep. We ourselves, the consulting firm, have grown our headcount by 70% over the last 18 months. But guess where the biggest growth has come from? Our office in Trinidad, where we've grown by more than 200%. And not because Trinidad may be cheaper location compared to North America, but because that's where we could find the talent. And we could successfully integrate them into our global projects. They're not working on local or even regional projects. They're working on global projects. So
you see why I'm losing my staff, Anupam? I'm losing my staff because of people like Anupam.
Well, that's the healthy cooperation age we live in, right? Well, the reality is every local employee today is a global employee, right? You can work for any company from anywhere. But specifically for nearshore, I think this is, I would say it's a golden age. However, there are still challenges that need to be overcome. I think Maria pointed out that the pace of digitalization had been slower in Caribbean and also in the Latin America region. And that has hindered some of these countries from tapping these new opportunities that are emerging. Just, when COVID happened, we saw different reactions in different countries in Latin America, for example. We had Costa Rica, which was already digitalizing at a very rapid pace. They were able to move their workers, whether in the global services or other sectors, to work remotely quite efficiently. And the government understood the need for that when allowed companies to move equipment from offices, from free zones into the employees' homes. Whereas in other few other countries, I don't want to name, in Latin America, the industry was shut down literally overnight because there was a lockdown. People couldn't work from offices, and yet they had no equipment to work from home. And the government did not realize in this age, they have to allow that flexibility, and that digital connectivity is most critical to keep the economy running. So I feel the governments have to now understand that while rules and regulations are important, but as we move into this new virtual economy, they have to adapt to this reality. The other part is that what we don't realize is in the services industry, the most critical component of the supply chain are people. So people are really what drive that industry. And we have to make sure that they're taken care of, they're educated, as Maria said, they have to have not just the language skills or the basic foundational skills, they have to be able to adopt the digital skills. So that digital skills education is very, very important. We had launched an index called Digital Competitiveness Index 2 years ago, just 6 months before the COVID crisis. And I think it was maybe very prophetical in the sense that it's highlighted for the first time that what's more important than size and cost is access to digital talent, the right digital infrastructure, and the right regulations to enable a digital ecosystem. COVID made that reality overnight very, very inevitable. Meaning, if you don't have that, you are, as an economy, or as a country, or as a business, you're going to perish. So I think nearshore has a very good advantage because naturally there's a lot of growth happening in that region, but we have to catch up in terms of talent, access to digital infrastructure, and more flexible digital regulations.
Okay, wonderful. Mario, y en esta lógica, pasando un poquito más a tu sector, ¿cómo ves ese desarrollo, llamémoslo, de agrotech? Porque tenemos ArtTech con Richard y tenemos agrotech con Mario, como para separarlos un poco. ¿Cómo ves tú esas oportunidades en Latinoamérica y en generar un valor adicional, más de una perspectiva mucho más de ecosistema agro?
Mira, yo pienso que para nosotros los emprendedores es una oportunidad, pero para la industria agrícola es más bien un desafío, porque hemos visto que, bueno, como ustedes saben, en Latinoamérica nosotros somos muy buenos para hacer agricultura, de hecho somos los mejores. En Latinoamérica hacemos fruta fresca, somos los principales exportadores de muchas especies, pero los grandes desafíos que tenemos nosotros en términos de adopción digital tiene que ver con dos cosas principalmente. Una, tiene que ver con el acceso a conectividad. Muchas veces los agricultores están desconectados, y llámese desconectados digitalmente, es decir, voy a una finca en Colombia y no tengo señal de celular y ni acceso a ningún tipo de...
La brecha digital rural y urbana es fuerte.
Exacto, entonces, ¿cómo transformar a alguien si está desconectado? Entonces, lo primero es que hay que conectarlo, ese es el primer desafío. Y lo segundo tiene que ver con el acceso a financiamiento, porque en nuestro caso estamos digitalizando la agricultura y muchas veces tú puedes generar valor desde la tecnología, pero para eso a veces se necesitan recursos y apoyos, muchas veces apoyos por parte del Estado, por parte de las empresas privadas, que puedan acercar al agricultor en estas dos como llamaste tú, brechas, tanto tecnológicas como de financiamiento, porque yo le puedo entregar un Ferrari a un agricultor, pero si no le enseño a conducirlo, no va a lograr desplazarse nunca. Entonces, necesito herramientas. Y precisamente ese es uno de los, como te decía, principales desafíos que tenemos en la región. Hay países como Israel, Estados Unidos o Australia que están entendiendo esto y no significa que nosotros no lo entendamos, sino que quizás fueron los first movers, están haciendo cosas y están mucho más avanzados y por lo mismo con otros resultados, otros rendimientos, otros calibres. Entonces, yo creo que hay una oportunidad única. Yo creo que estamos en el mejor momento de la historia para emprender en digital y sobre todo en la industria agrícola. Así que de paso aprovecho de invitarlo a que entre todos empujemos este sector que es uno de los más importantes porque nunca vamos a terminar de alimentarnos, siempre nos tenemos que alimentar, así que con la tecnología podemos hacerlo más eficiente.
Totalmente de acuerdo y sobre todo mucha inclusión. Nuestros países necesitan mucha capacidad de mejorar el tema de equidad y si mejoramos los temas rurales y esa capacidad cognitiva vamos a estar en mejores circunstancias. Richard, en tu caso, pues obviamente otro mundo particular. Ya seguramente le rayaste la cabeza mucho acá que es un NFT y ya le complicaste la vida hablando de blockchain, pero ¿cuáles serían esas oportunidades en términos muy, digamos, particulares y concretos que tú veas ahora en este mundo? Puede ser economía naranja, que es una manera como la hemos venido abordando en Colombia, o cómo la contemplas tú en términos prácticos, esa convergencia entre ahora en nearshore o lo que puede ser el arte y el arttech.
Sí, yo lo veo muy bien porque imagínense, vayamos a lo digital, no quiero ir a la parte de artistas que pintan un cuadro, sino por ejemplo el típico diseñador gráfico que todas las empresas hoy en día están necesitando. ¿Qué pasó con ese diseñador? Pasó de que como se precisa mucho, es un trabajo que no es muy bien valorado, ¿sí? Y el artista pasó a cobrar muy poco por trabajar y hacer piezas de arte. ¿Por qué? Porque el consumo de ese tipo de contenidos es muy rápido. Se están necesitando día a día para Instagram Post, etcétera, un contenido que se consume demasiadamente rápido. Entonces, ese tipo de trabajo era, por ejemplo, en Latinoamérica, un trabajo que se terciarizaba, ¿sí? Digamos, nosotros siempre estamos trabajando para agencias o productoras de Estados Unidos, ¿sí? Ofreciendo este tipo de servicios de diseño gráfico. Hoy en día, con esta disrupción que hubo en el mercado de NFT, el artista digital, el diseñador gráfico, pasó a ser la estrella. ¿Sí? Entonces ahora nos contratan artistas famosos como por ejemplo Shakira, que en esta semana sacó su propia colección de NFT, ha contratado a un artista digital, el cual obviamente va por porcentajes, ¿sí? Pasa a ser la estrella en este mundo y por supuesto que la ganancia es mucho mayor. Entonces eso hizo un cambio en el juego, incluso yo que me dedico a crear colecciones de NFT, ahora si tengo que contratar a un artista, ya tengo que ir, o a un diseñador gráfico, ya tengo que ir por porcentajes. ¿Por qué? Porque la misma tecnología de blockchain lo permite. Estas plataformas permiten que se puedan poner royalties para diferentes personas. Entonces, por ejemplo, si el usuario, el diseñador, el artista, se quiere quedar con un 10% de la pieza de los NFT que Shakira está vendiendo, cada vez que Shakira venda un NFT, esa repartición se va, por ejemplo, el 90% para Shakira y 10% para el artista. Entonces, a lo que voy con esto es una muy buena oportunidad, estamos en the Golden Age, como decían, porque sinceramente el sector que estaba siendo un poco marginado, ¿sí? Pasa a ser un sector de importancia, al igual que lo fueron los developers antes haciendo solamente páginas web y luego aparecieron las aplicaciones mobile, etcétera, y el desarrollador pasó a estar en un nuevo escalafón donde sus sueldos y todo se triplicaron. Lo mismo va a pasar hoy en día con los artistas digitales. Entonces creo que es una muy buena oportunidad para todos que estamos en este medio.
Muchas gracias, no, fascinante. Creo que más de uno va a estar involucrado ahora en pues, que sigan a Shakira, me parece espectacular como colombiano, pero que más bien se metan en negocios y hagan cadenas regionales de valor, que es lo que veo que se está desarrollando acá de manera muy sofisticada. Ramiro, ya ahora sí entrando en preguntas particulares, una que pues es interesante, creo que tú alcanzaste, I'm sorry, I'm doing this in English now, that you mentioned before that it was, well, let's follow in Spanish now. Tú mencionaste una pregunta, un tema de tecnología y era, pues ya veníamos utilizando la tecnología y pues eso no es algo nuevo. Hemos estado ya en varias revoluciones industriales, pasamos sobre todo de la tercera, que es la digital, ahora a la cuarta y ya estamos todos sintiendo la presión de la quinta en la nuca. Pero tú, algo que le interesa a uno es, si ya teníamos el uso de los computadores 50 en los años 60 y aquí como estamos todos de millennials y centennials en este panel, nos hemos enterado qué pasaba en los 50 por YouTube. ¿Qué es lo que hace de tan diferente ahora la tecnología?
Buenísimo, buenísimo. Bueno, ya contesté dos en español, en inglés, ahora contesto la otra en español. Es cierto, fíjate vos que interesante, porque nuestra civilización, desde que éramos cavernícolas, siempre el uso de la información fue muy importante, pero la infraestructura era rígida, ¿verdad? Dependiendo de dónde tenías vos tu caverna, así era. Lo mismo en la era agrícola, que era también donde pusiste los campos. Y en la era industrial, donde pusiste la línea férrea, tus fábricas, donde pusiste tu línea de tu carretera. Tecnología es diferente, porque sí, depende de la tecnología, pero está cambiando, ¿verdad? Empezamos en los 50 con computadoras que eran mainframes y que eran lenguajes como Fortran y COBOL, y era muy rígido, y nos organizamos para optimizar ese recurso. Cambió el ecosistema tecnológico y vinieron las laptops y local area networks y las computadoras personales. Y entonces fíjate vos que se volvieron tan barato que yo podía apoyar a mis profesionales para que cada uno tuviera una computadora. Entonces nos organizamos de diferente forma, que es ayudar a las computadoras pequeñas. Luego vino el Internet y estos paquetes corporativos como Enterprise Resource Planning y Customer Relationship Management, Salesforce, que es donde hay muchas empresas, que es esta tecnología para ser más estratégicos. Pero ahorita, como nos estamos dando cuenta, cambió la tecnología, el ecosistema, y vemos entonces que está blockchain, como decía Ricardo, tenemos Internet of Things, Artificial Intelligence, ¿verdad? Que la diferencia es que es una tecnología que está haciendo muy barato la captura de grandes volúmenes de datos, ¿verdad? Y que son datos que están muy cerca del cliente final, ¿verdad? Con su celular. Y entonces la oportunidad que existe ahora es que no tengo yo que utilizar esta tecnología nuevamente solo para repetir lo que siempre se ha hecho, sino para romper barreras, ¿verdad? Si te pones a pensar, digamos, Airbnb, por poner un ejemplo, no fue que empezara a utilizar la tecnología como lo hacían los hoteles Marriott o los hoteles Hilton para ser más eficiente, más productivo, sino que utilizó la tecnología para cambiar cómo es que percibimos lodging, que es si yo tengo una casa secundaria de vacaciones, ¿cómo puedo hacer para aprovecharla a alguien que va a esa ciudad? Entonces, eso es lo que es lo interesante de la tecnología, es que nos está permitiendo entonces romper barreras en vez de ponerle cemento a cómo funcionaban las industrias.
Fascinante. Muchas gracias, Ramiro. Muy buena aproximación. Maria, you mentioned all about obviously the situation of the Caribbean. You're happy because Anupam is hiring people from your staff and from your location. But let's go to the other side of the coin. How can regional integration improve the ICT development in the Caribbean? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so I mean, in the Caribbean, anybody who operates in the Caribbean would know we call it the Caribbean, but it doesn't operate like the Caribbean. So anybody who wants to do business in the Caribbean has to understand 12 different regulatory environments, different legislation. It's complicated to do business. And you're talking about some islands have as little as 25,000 people, some even less if you talk about Montserrat. And, you know, technology has taken long, I think, at least this is my view, part of the transformation. And Ramiro, you were talking about, you know, transformation. And I think people mix up digital when we talk about automation and when we talk about transformation. It's two different things, right? So transformation in Ramiro's example, Airbnb didn't digitize the hotel industry. They transformed the vacation industry. Let me put it that way. They actually opened up the market to people who would not have been able to travel before. So to do that kind of transformation in the Caribbean takes a level of scalability, which each island will never have, right? And, you know, I work with a lot of startups and entrepreneurs from technology companies, and I tell them, okay, we don't have room for 5 wallets in the Caribbean. If we really want the Caribbean to be able to be inclusive for everyone and have solutions that not just add value, but are efficient and cost effective, the entire region has to come together. So we have different currencies. We have, as I said, different laws. I remember about 20 years ago, I was working with a client that wanted to connect the entire Caribbean on one cellular network. I mean, really connected. And here why that project never happened. To get the landing rights from one island to the next was taking years in each island. So effectively, it didn't make sense. So that was before the Digicells came into the Caribbean. And that was a Caribbean entrepreneur coming with the idea, but he couldn't get it done because he couldn't get the mass across the region. And then the Digicells came in and, you know, again, it goes back to foreign. So to really see us moving from a technology perspective, we have to come together. The governments have to come together. The egos have to drop. And I will say this openly, this is not an EY statement, this is a Maria Daniels statement. If we can get the rest of the prime ministers to think like the Honorable Mia Mottley, not because she's a strong woman, but because she's a smart person, then we could see the Caribbean moving in the right direction. But we haven't been able to agree on laws. We haven't been able to agree on one currency. And again, technology does take scalability, and each island on its own can't get it. So if we really want to sell services, if we really want to be a competitor in the global landscape, we have to come together and not compete with each other and really find the competitive advantage in each of the countries and use that effectively.
Wonderful. Well, we call it the 3 C's, and I totally agree with you. We need more collaboration, cooperation, and co-creation. So those 3 C's with you, and your strong statement are not alone. We support you. That's definitely what we need in Latin America as a whole. But I totally understand what you're saying. So Anupam, you mentioned global shore, that is no longer offshore and nearshore. And obviously there are new aspects of digitalization, you know, creating a new competitive advantage of nations. So when you mix global shore, can you elaborate more because of that? How digitalization is obviously creating more capacities because of that situation?
Yeah, I think first of all, I do want to also concur with Maria what she said, that, you know, for Caribbean region coming together and creating this huge economy and economies of scale is very, very critical, and it's happening already. But also, more importantly, there are areas within the digital spectrum where Caribbean has natural affinity. And you mentioned about blockchain and Bitcoin and crypto economy. It's already happening in countries like islands like Curacao and Barbados, where the local government realized very quickly, opened up their regulations and economy, and we're seeing these crypto startups and investments coming in, right? So we need to be thinking in those terms. Now, coming to global shoring and you know, how this is all being accelerated due to COVID, I think you know, what we're seeing is, first of all, when COVID happened, and I think Atul in the previous panel talked about this, it started as a local phenomenon. It started in China, and centers started shutting down, the global development centers for the big service providers, and they had to move the work to Philippines or India or other locations. And then as a wave, it slowly expanded and covered the whole globe, right? So every location was impacted. Every location basically became its own BCP, business continuity option, right? So what it's highlighted is today, in today's age, we have to, in order to deliver global services effectively, we have to have a network which spans not just different countries, but different regions. So nearshore, I think, definitely is a key component of that. And also, I think in terms of talent, nearshore has some unique advantages. And we're seeing that it's not just about the cultural and the time zone affinity, but they have more creative skills, for example. And the nearshore proximity allows for a higher degree of creative content development. So those are some of the areas where I think nearshore will definitely do well. But let me touch upon the other aspect, which is how the traditional businesses, as we started off, how are they being impacted because of digitalization, right? And how that can change the landscape in Latin America and Caribbean. So an interesting example is we were doing a digital tourism strategy for Nicaragua. And what we realized is the local tourism operators there now, they make more income from doing digital tours through like an Airbnb experience than they do by serving physical customers who are coming there. And of course, during COVID, physical travel became very limited. So they're all becoming now digital tourism operators, right? And that same effect is going through all the other sectors, right? Restaurants have grown from becoming neighborhood local restaurants to become citywide restaurants, because now you can deliver anywhere, right? Banks are becoming fully digital and branchless, right? Healthcare, of course, is being transformed with telemedicine, virtual triaging, digital health has taken off, right? Retail also now, they're becoming storefronts for brands and for local pickup and support for digital commerce companies, right? So the business model itself is shifting in many cases. The adoption of digital technologies, be it using digital channels like chat and digital commerce, or whether it's using automation, AI to streamline the back-end operations, these are really very, very critical. And I think nearshore can become a part of this global shore ecosystem if they can accelerate that whole process, both at the private sector level, but also at the government level and the education level.
Great examples, Anupam. I didn't know about Nicaragua and all the things that you just mentioned. Very interesting about digital tourism. Bueno, Richard, perdón. Richard o Ricardo, da lo mismo porque estamos hablando en Spanglish.
Sí, me llamo Richard, pero si me quieren decir Ricardo, está
bien. Yo creo que no todos entendemos algo tan nuevo como es NFT, ¿no? Para efectos prácticos estamos asimilando 7, 10 meses más o menos de existencia de esa tecnología. ¿Por qué están pagando miles y millones de dólares por un NFT? Y si puedes explicar un poquito más, porque creo que aquí vamos a rompernos la cabeza para ver qué más sectores podemos ayudar a contribuir con esto.
Por supuesto. Para ponerles un ejemplo, el NFT más caro que se ha vendido hasta ahora ha sido un JPG por 69 millones de dólares. Entonces, la gran pregunta acá es, ¿por qué están pagando esa cantidad? Bueno, hay 3 factores. Uno es la innovación. Estamos en una tecnología totalmente temprana, pero que además está apoyada por una tecnología ya existente, que son blockchain, las criptomonedas, etcétera. Una tecnología que tiene más de 10 años en curso, en la cual muchísimas personas están confiando, y no solo eso, sino que muchas personas se han hecho ricas a través de esta tecnología. Entonces, confían plenamente en ello, y esto es simplemente, esto de NFT es un salto más de esa tecnología, ¿sí? Es como, a mí me gusta llamarla la primera aplicación de la tecnología blockchain. Luego tenemos otro que es la rentabilidad. Realmente está dando rentabilidad. Al igual que en el arte tradicional hay rentabilidad y por eso los cuadros se pagan millones de dólares, también está pasando en esta tecnología, ¿sí? Por ejemplo, me ha pasado a mí en mis colecciones de lanzar una obra digital que se compra hoy por $1000 y a la tarde se está revendiendo por $3000 la misma pieza. Entonces, todo esto al instante. ¿Por qué? Porque tenemos varios beneficios en esta tecnología. Número uno es que es totalmente digital. Puedo estarle vendiendo mi obra a una persona de otro país que ni siquiera hablamos el mismo idioma. Número dos, no hay intermediarios, ¿sí? No hay, digamos, galerías de arte que se llevan el 50% de mi obra. Aquí simplemente estamos utilizando un sistema que se lleva un 2,5 de royalties, nada más, ¿sí? Luego también lo que está pasando es que se agrega una nueva función a los artistas que son los royalties automáticos. Cada vez que se vende y se revende mi obra de arte, yo me quedo con un porcentaje de esa venta. Entonces, hay rentabilidad tanto para el inversor como para el artista, ¿sí? El artista sigue cobrando esos royalties a medida que pasan los años y a medida que esa obra se revende. Y luego tenemos un tercer factor, como toda obra de arte, que es estatus social, ¿sí? No lo podemos omitir porque es gran parte, al igual que alguien gasta, por ejemplo, $1 millón en un Lamborghini o en un Ferrari o en una obra de arte, se gasta $20 millones en un cuadro que lo pone en exposición en la casa. Aquí también sucede lo mismo, nada más que acá hay un cambio en el juego. Anteriormente, si uno gastaba $1 millón en una obra de arte y la ponía en la casa, únicamente lo veían las personas que venían a la casa, ¿sí? De esa persona, o si no, lo rentaban a galerías de arte, donde ellos exponían esa obra de arte, otras personas podían venir a verlas. Sin embargo, hoy en día la galería es totalmente digital. Entonces, si yo compro un NFT, por ejemplo ese de $69 millones, todo el mundo se entera de que yo soy el propietario de ese NFT. Entonces, para poner el ejemplo, en este caso, tanto el artista que vendió ese NFT por $69 millones como quien lo compró, ambos fueron iguales de famosos, ¿sí? Entonces, ahí es cuando entra el estatus social también dentro de esta tecnología.
Espectacular. Creo que vamos a ver mucho de ese crecimiento en las capacidades artísticas que tenemos en Latinoamérica para darles una oportunidad de desarrollo, un sector tradicional que va a estar cambiando. Y eso que tradicional el arte, pues no es tradicional, el arte está todo el tiempo en movimiento y cambiando. Mario, ya que estamos en lo particular, como dicen en Colombia, el yaque, ¿cómo es ese tema de digitalizar, pues, o lograr que cambie la capacidad del agro en Latinoamérica? Porque finalmente es el propósito de ustedes, es lograr que en toda la región pueda uno tener pues esa visibilidad del sector agrícola. Y por eso hablo del agrotech, pero no sé qué nos puedas compartir para entender cómo van a ser los siguientes pasos.
Sí, mira, nosotros hacemos mucho análisis, estamos capturando datos de distintas fuentes casi minuto a minuto, entonces somos bien, valga la redundancia, analítico en ese sentido. Por ejemplo, además de lo que mencioné del uso de agua, que lo llevamos medido porque muchos países se están secando, el uso de agua en la agricultura es un tema, estamos haciendo mucha gestión para aumentar los rendimientos. Entonces, por ejemplo, cosas que nos hemos dado cuenta es que podemos en una primera temporada aumentar los yields, aumentar los rendimientos. Es decir, en un lugar donde tú podías producir 1000 kilos de cerezas, por ejemplo, ahora tú podrías hacer 1200 y con menos recursos. Entonces eso tiene múltiple impactos, porque por un lado estamos moviendo socialmente a los agricultores, porque se hacen más competitivos, Por otro lado, estamos haciendo un favor al medio ambiente, porque estamos usando menos recursos, menos agua, menos fertilizantes. Y bueno, y el tercer impacto es el económico, porque finalmente hacemos mejor producción, lo que significa que si tengo mejor fruta puedo venderla más cara y a tiempo. Entonces el desafío de lo que se viene en lo particular para nosotros, nosotros a principio de año levantamos una ronda de financiamiento de casi $3 millones y ahora estamos pensando en expandirnos a otros países, primero cubrir la región, ya como te mencioné tenemos presencia en 8 países, para después seguir haciendo lo que nos gusta en Europa y en Estados Unidos, que allá los desafíos también son muy importantes, pero yo pienso que, como había comentado antes, hay un desafío que es muy grande, faltan muchos casos, faltan más emprendedores que se animen a hacer cosas, en este caso en agricultura, porque este es el mejor momento. Ese es casi como un mensaje final o mensaje de cierre para el resto de los emprendedores o para los que están haciendo transformaciones, es que este es el mejor momento. La pandemia fue mala para muchas cosas, pero para nosotros, como agentes de cambio digital, está perfecto, está impecable. Todo lo que han hablado acá mis compañeros del panel, estoy muy de acuerdo porque hay mucho por hacer. Entonces, más que a veces uno ve los noticiarios, las quejas, los números que son malos, pero no muestran esto maravilloso que está ocurriendo. Entonces, hay que aprovecharlo y eso se viene ahora.
Gracias, Mario. Terminándolo en tono muy alto y muy positivo. Well, I wish we have more time, and I also wish next time Maria would invite us to have this panel in Trinidad. That depends on Javier to pay for our cost, but we will be very happy to be in Trinidad for the next time of this panel. We really want to thank everybody for, this insight. It was very insightful, very important to share these ideas, to share these concepts. We can definitely agree that services have an amazing opportunity ahead. Traditional sectors will definitely adapt and evolve digitally. And that means inclusion, that means cooperation, that means collaboration. That also means new capacity of business models. It's amazing what Richard is doing in terms of NFTs. I'm still trying to understand what is NFT and probably going to have more time to do it. And Mario, congratulations. It's amazing what you're doing also in agrotech. Anupan, Ramiro, and Maria, thank you for that insight and amazing capacity to share ideas. You were very generous. Javier, I'm sorry, but this is the end of our panel. We wish we could have the beach and have a cocktail with Trinidad, but
anytime.
Se supone que tenemos que estar en Barbados ahora, pero bueno, en fin, había cuarentena para ingresar a Barbados. Muchas gracias, Santiago, muchas gracias, Ramiro, Anupam, Richard, María, Mario. Una de las cosas que me llevo de esto, que estoy convencido de que el sector agrícola, como ventajas comparativas que tienen nuestros países sumados a las competitivas de tecnologías, es definitivo una gran oportunidad. Pero el de Richard es el que es muy llamativo, ni siquiera lo incluí en el libro porque está nuevo, ni siquiera lo incluí en el libro. Y lo más preocupante es que nosotros en ALES siempre somos apasionados por el diseño y ya estoy preocupado por cuánto nos va a salir la contratación de los próximos diseñadores.
Exacto. Ya te digo, es como en el momento de los desarrolladores, cuando empezaron a surgir las aplicaciones.
Muchísimas gracias a todos y para los seguidores de ALES nos vemos el 6 del 10 en el próximo evento. Chau, chau, muchas gracias.
Un gusto, gracias.
Hasta luego.
Chau, chau.
Bye.